because it's not working, because we've tried to make it work, different boards, here's what I think we should do. Is that we change it to where the city can draw down as much out of the 1.7 million per year as they're willing to match. If they want to match 300, take 3. You want to match 4, take 4, until the fund is depleted, and then they're required to budget 300,000 a year for sidewalks, or some number that the board thinks, because it's not working what's been proposed for the last 25, 40 years, whatever it's been. And that gets the money, Mike, you were saying the money's sitting there.
Yeah.
So this way we get it, let them draw it down, and then have to budget every year an amount.
I thought it was more of the, Madam Chairman, may I speak? I don't know if you're in the, you have to call on me.
Carrie?
Madam Chair, is it okay if I speak, or I didn't know if you had
Yes,
to
go
call?
ahead.
Okay.
I was just trying to write down John's idea.
I didn't think there was a problem with the charter aspect of it. I think it was internal procedures that they were not spending the money and shaking it loose. I don't know. I mean, obviously, they may have had an indifferent interpretation of how the charter read. But I put the problem is not within the charter. It was in how the city maybe interpreted the charter, or the staff interpreted the charter, versus them being able, because the money's there. There's no reason why they can't allocate the funds. So that goes to your, when it comes to budgeting, those who are responsible for putting the budget together, not utilizing the resources that have been put aside for that purpose. And I don't know. What do we do? If you want to, are you looking at try to tweak that provision of the charter?
Well, Mike, the original, when we had the original discussion, you were saying this 2 million or 1.7 million is sitting there and it's not doing anything. Well, the way it's written today is that they can only, the city can only draw 100 down out of the 1.7 million per year.
Does it say that, or?
That's right. Well, they only get matching funds up to 1.7 million, so the budget of the city has only been to
No, but
equal the match.
The way it's written today, they can only take 100,000.
Right, that's right.
Okay, so what I'm suggesting, because this doesn't work, the previous thing of the 2 million and the 100 didn't work, is,
Yeah.
and you want to see the sidewalks in the town fixed, right? That's the goal, and not have money just sitting around in the bank doing nothing, is let them identify if it's $600,000 this year to fix sidewalks, let them take 3 and 3.
Should it say it should match whatever the city allocates?
Well, if we just take out that middle line, the amount withdrawn does not exceed 100,000 per fiscal year, you have it, because you've already talked about it has to be less than or equal to the amount appropriated for sidewalk improvement. So that is the equal match.
Right, so,
And then we would want to add in a paragraph that talks to how to replenish it.
well, you can either, you can not replenish it. You can just say, the city can spend the money for sidewalks, and when the fund is depleted, they're required to put in 300, 400, 500, whatever is appropriate. See what I'm saying, Jimmy?
I do.
Because it's not working the way it is.
Well, we're already removing the first sentence in that section, so.
I appreciate that. My problem, once again, is going to be the same. They're not going to do it.
No, if the charter requires them to budget 500,000, they have to, or 400 or 300, or, right?
Yes.
I'm okay for that, but
I just don't see how they get around it.
they just don't do it. It's not getting
Well,
around it.
they're doing what is allowed with it now, and it's not working.
The list they sent us is, in my opinion, is very necessary to do those. And it equaled up to 600 and some thousand.
But they only budgeted 200,000. They budgeted 100 out of the sidewalk fund, and they budgeted 100 out of the capital improvement fund. or out of the general fund.
Right.
So,
But they spent
sorry.
200. Okay, so how
There
is the
was a
charter gonna make them
400,000
spend any more?
Well,
Get the,
What-
get the second sentence out of there. Amount withdrawn shall not exceed 100,000. That way, there's no cap on what can come out of the fund.
You know what, when, sorry, I can't remember his name from Public Works, came and spoke to
Tom
us.
Function.
Tom Function, yes. Excuse me. He basically said that, well, you give me $1 million, I'll do a lot of things. You give me $2 million, I'll do everything on the list. Talk is cheap. I mean, we could give them $1 million right now. I'll guarantee you they won't use it next year. I'm sorry to feel that way, but
Well, it's proven itself.
it's proven itself. I'm willing to do whatever this board wants to do to try to get them to do more. I don't have a problem with any of what you're saying.
Well, and this is just an observation on what I've seen in my own neighborhood as far as the way they do the program. And it's been a great program. It's done a lot of good things. And they do it to make the money go as far as they possibly can, but that also creates a problem where it's difficult for them to spend too much money because they're doing this with city crews, at least in my neighborhood they did. They didn't hire a contractor and bid it out and have somebody replace all these sidewalks. They had a city crew come in and do it. And maybe with the $200,000 total, maybe they can manage that with city staff. $600,000 they couldn't do that way. They'd have to change the way they're operating.
I agree with what you said about contractors. I mean, they prove themselves around the bayous by trimming the mangroves and stuff. It's never looked better. And they still have the same amount of city employees, but they found the money to do that. If what he told us is true, then let's call him in here and ask him if we write this out where you get $1 million this year, but you have to hire a contractor.
Yeah, that's the only way it's
I'm
going to
with
get
you. It's the
done.
only way.
I don't think you're going to mandate, you're not going to mandate in the charter that.
I agree.
Okay,
I
so-
agree.
so-
But
Here was the
it's
thing.
just that
Here-
I know.
they're not going to.
I know.
No,
But
but I
here's the
think
thing.
with the charter, we need to at least provide the mechanism by which they can do that. Administrations change, department heads change. At least if we provide the mechanism, in the future, it could be better.
Well, here's what resonated with me, Mike.
Okay.
When somebody, you or somebody said, we have all this money sitting there, they can take 100,000 a year, but they're not putting in enough to, like Jimmy,
Cover it.
600,000. They're take 100, but there's $600,000 worth of work, instead of budgeting another 500,000. And I'm thinking, somebody was right when they said this 1.7 used to be 2 million is sitting there. Let them draw it down. Let them fix the sidewalks, and at the end, when the sidewalk fund is depleted, then there's not a sidewalk fund, and it just goes to a straight mandated set amount of money annually. Let them spend the $1.7 million, bringing the town up to date, and then you then spend whatever is a good number, 300, 400, 500,000 a year to repair, replace, add new. I gave it a lot of thought. It's not worked so far.
My understanding is they thought, and that all they could, I'm not talking about for the city's budget, that they were hamstringed from pulling money out of that fund because they were limited to $100,000, shall not exceed 100.
That's right.
So removing that sentence removes the cap as to what can be withdrawn from that fund.
That's fine, but what happens at the end when the $1.7 million's gone because nothing is replenishing it? That was the second part of my thing, of
Is it-
saying, at the end, when the $1.7 million's depleted, Mike, okay? You with me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, $1.7 million's depleted, then we have to say evidently that you have to budget 400,000 or 500,000 to continue this, or not, or just say, spend the money and we're not gonna
was there, and I don't know if there's more, I forgot, go back to that section. Is there more to that section that requires the city to fund a sidewalk improvement plan?
No.
No, we took it was taken out the last time. Mm-hmm. It used to be that they.
Does it say the street sidewalk improvement fund shall be renamed? Okay, but there is no requirement that the city fund,
In '83, it was required they put in $100,000 a year until they got to 2 million. Then at 2 million, they didn't have to fund it anymore, but they could only spend the interest up to 100. Okay, and it stayed that way until 5 years ago. 5 years ago, they changed it to this, where they could take out 100.
Yeah, also, 5 years ago, our interest rates were like nothing. They had no interest to draw from.
Yeah. No, I'm not
Yeah,
complaining
no, I
what
just
you
wanted to
did.
put it in
I'm just saying,
context, yeah.
Your intentions were good, but the city didn't follow through with, on their end.
but are we getting to a point where we're mandating, it's fine, but are we mandating the city to fund a certain value towards their budget? Is that what we are looking at the charter to do, to demand
Take it
that
out.
annually?
I think the mindset is to get the city motivated
Do ongoing-
to maintain our
There you
sidewalks.
go.
It's going to be an ongoing problem. Sidewalks you don't change them and they stay good forever.
Right.
Right.
They have to get them done first.
They get run
And then
over,
the
they get-
cost of maintaining them comes way down because they've been repaired, okay?
Mr. Salzman, you had a comment?
We have the original language before it was changed, if you want to hear it. The sum of $100,000 obtained from the city's share of sales tax revenues shall be deposited annually into an interest-bearing street and sidewalk improvement investment fund until such time as the sum of $2 million has been accrued.
We can put that back
All
in.
interest in such fund thereafter shall be used solely for street drainage and sidewalk improvement after authorization thereof, therefore, by resolution of the Board of Commissioners. Such funds shall only be invested in compliance with Chapter 218 Florida statutes. The principal of such fund shall not be invaded without referendum approval. All sales tax revenues received by the city in excess of $100,000 annually or $2 million totally may be used for any lawful purpose. That was the language before it was changed to this language.
So
It's, times have changed. I mean, it's.
we can go back to that language and require $100,000 to always be going into the fund while removing the cap. And that would take care of the issue of what happens when the fund gets depleted. Well, it's automatically, rebuilding. And if they get up to $2 million again, which we hope they don't have to make that continued investment.
They will never get up to $2 million again.
I wonder if it shouldn't be an impact fee, actually, when people do development that requires new sidewalks,
It was
the
either-
city has to maintain those
Well,
sidewalks.
Well, if you
sidewalks
look
are
at
in there.
what's in here, it says the proceeds from this fund shall not be used for sidewalks along roadways or roadway extensions, whether commercial or residentials, where roadways or roadway extensions are not physically in existence at the time of the adoption of this section.
Well, what I'm saying, though, is the developer puts those in.
Right.
But the city has to maintain them in perpetuity,
Oh,
basically.
so have the
So
how do you?
have the impact fee for the cost of maintaining.
Maintaining.
Depends on whether the development has a private street or a public street.
Well, that's true, too, because if it's a private street,
If it's a private
it's still
street,
the
they do it.
developers.
I don't know
Yeah.
about any more impact fees. I just think, let them spend $1.7 million and then say you got to spend X number of dollars more every year.
Well, would it be good just for right now, before, I know we've got to wordsmith it some more, but at least we would agree that to remove the cap.
Well, we got to
Not
finish
without
it.
guidelines.
Okay.
That's what I said, take the cap off.
Take the cap off. But what other changes would,
I mean, I would ask if the second part of it shouldn't be one of the recommendations to the BOC, that they set aside whatever, $500,600,000 for the next year and some similar amount every year for a contract to hire a contractor every year to come in and do
The-
this.
The commission changes too much, Merle. You have to, if we
There
let them
is
spend
that,
$1,000,007, you gotta say in the charter, you gotta replace some language that says, when the $1,000,007 is depleted, the city will budget 400,000, 500,000, 300,000 per year for, but if you make it too low, based on history, that's all they're gonna spend. And they
Yeah.
won't, so you gotta make it enough to where it actually works.
Should we look at maybe making it a matching? So if the city budgets 200, 200 comes out of that account. If the city
What
says
happens when it's
300?
depleted? Because
Until it's
nothing else
depleted.
is going.
Until it's depleted.
We have a hand up here. Let's go ahead and hear what John has to say.
Okay. What I'd like everybody to consider is, instead of putting a definite dollar cap on it, how about a percentage of what's in the reserve fund?
Say that again, John?
Instead of putting a definitive dollar cap on the expenditures, we consider using a percentage of the fund. So that way, you could get what you need to make the repairs without completely depleting it.
Well, you're gonna deplete it because you're not putting any back in. No matter what your percentage is, at some point, you're gonna completely deplete it without replenishment.
It's true.
Yeah.
Unless, I
Is
mean,
that, is depletion the goal, or is building it
I
up
don't-
the goal?
repairing sidewalks.
Repairing sidewalks is the
Right.
goal, and having the city actually do it is the goal.
Right. So it seems that whatever we do with this fund, we're still not compelling the city to do all the repairs and the construction, right?
Well, remember when Mr. Funchen was here, and Jimmy has the list. It's, this year it was 600,000.
Right.
Next year, he said it was gonna be 800,000. But they only budgeted 200. 100 from this fund, 100 from the general fund. So if you made the money available, I'm assuming they would, if they had it to budget, you would think that they would, either through what Merle said, a sidewalk contract, a masonry contractor or city crews, they would do more work. Because
You
it's
use
not,
that dreaded word assume.
it's a tough one.
I'm not sure, but I'm going to ask the question. Is it possible that the reason they didn't spend the 600,000 is because they had to take money back out of the budget to put somewhere else in the budget? I don't know that. I'm guessing.
Well, right,
Why,
Jimmy,
if you
what they're
have that
saying-
much money, why the hell didn't you spend it?
No,
you know?
he didn't get, he had he showed you a $600,000 list of projects. He didn't say he got 600,000 in the budget, he said he only got 200,000. So what I'm saying is, let him have access to the 600,000, if that's what it takes, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, the first way didn't work, the second way didn't work.
Let's try
Let's try it
something else.
something
Well,
else.
that's the whole
Now for
point.
something
And if the
completely
fund's
different. We're in
depleted
monkey
in
mode.
5 years, then, and the sidewalks are improved, we can declare a success. On the other hand, if it's
Correct.
depleted and they haven't, we got to go back and
Who could,
figure out how to
who
do the
could we
motivation again.
call from the city to come in and talk to us and have them tell us how we could help them get these sidewalks done?
We did that.
Okay, I actually had a separate conversation with Tom Function a couple weeks ago, and we talked about the sidewalks, and I'm just trying to remember, did they think they could only spend as much to match the 100,000, if I remember correctly? And that's why he
They
don't,
were only budgeting,
because that's what they thought we had to match.
No.
in order to withdraw 100, they had to put
But-
100,000 in.
but-
So that's all they were,
But,
they were
but from
doing.
from a practical aspect, okay, so we have these funds available. Let's say they end up exhausting the funds, and the sidewalks 4 years from now, 5 years from now, ended back in disrepair. Do you not think that there would be a press by the residents to the then commission or whatever to say, hey, y'all are dropping the ball, and that's one of the reasons we elect people is because we may see somebody's dropping the ball, and or somebody may on their political platform, I'm vote for me, and we'll go back to fixing the sidewalks.
Mike, that's exactly what happened in 1983. There was such a public outcry, right, Jimmy?
Yeah.
The public was demanding the sidewalks be fixed. So when the charter revision, that's how we came up with the $2 million fund, okay? And you can spend 100. Then later, that wasn't working, so Jimmy and Kerry's group said, okay, we'll take off the cap and you can spend 100. I have to believe that the city manager knows that he could put more in than 100. I
There's
have to.
nothing in here to limit how much they spend
I have
on
to
sidewalks.
believe that he knew that he could add more than 100. Perhaps what Jimmy said was, there was budget constraints to do, the city's got a lot of things going on, and they said, okay, we'll do a couple hundred on the sidewalk. We got 600,000 we need to spend, but we'll spend 200. So that's when I came up with the comments of you. We got this $1.7 million sitting there. They're saying we could build more sidewalks, but we don't have the funds. Give them the money.
All
Let's see what
right,
happens.
so as it stands, we're looking to remove that provision that this shall not exceed 100,000.
Yes.
Okay, and that would be the only change that we're looking for.
Not for me, because I want to know when that fund is depleted, that the city is required to budget sidewalks.
Okay, but
Otherwise, we're gonna be right.
level?
Huh?
At what level?
Pick a number.
Well, if we're giving them over $1 million and they claim they have 600,000,
But that's
To
for
go.
this year.
okay, but I don't know that they have more than that. I would have thought that Tom or whoever made this budget out would have included everything that has to be done.
Jimmy, their plan is a 5-year plan. His plan was 600 this year, 800 next year. That's what he said.
And
I
they
think
did
that's
how
what he
much?
said. He
Huh?
got 200.
And they did 200.
Right, that's
it.
because
Yeah.
they're maximizing the power of the money from the city budget. They get matched 100,000, so that's what they're
They
putting forward.
they don't want to affect their budget, so therefore they don't go into their budget.
Right.
Okay?
Now you got
Okay, so, and so for him, it'd be a windfall to have access to these funds that don't come out of his budget or their budget.
Yes.
Or the general fund.
Okay, so, but it's not up to that department to come up, it's up to, I guess, the city manager when they go to budgeting to allocate, okay, what are your needs for sidewalks this year, Mr. Public Works Director? And so I just try to craft something here in my head. So sometimes I think out loud and when I talk. So crafting something that says that the city shall allocate no less than X number of dollars a year.
You talking about at the end when the fund's depleted?
No, yeah, when the funds are depleted, to allocate no less than X number of dollars a year. But if they're spending it, then how are they going to save it?
Nobody's asking them to save it anymore.
So you're telling them that but the thing is, if you put a number on it, John, that's all they're going to spend.
I know, that's why you can't make it too low, you can't make it too high, you gotta hit it right in the middle.
But,
What's the sweet spot?
What's the sweet
right?
spot?
okay.
So if we take out the limit, the best thing that could happen is the city would look at that 1.7 million and say, let's match it and get the work done. And then what
Well,
happens?
they're not gonna do
next year?
that.
It-
They're gonna say, we got $1.7 million to spend on sidewalks. They're
No,
not
well,
gonna-
they have to match it though.
No, they don't.
They're still, well, we're only taking out that middle thing. So it says that the amount withdrawn from the fund is less than or equal to the amount appropriated.
Well,
So then
that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
they
take off the
appropriate less.
caps and let them
The
spend it.
match and the match?
Let them spend it. Let them put the sidewalks in.
You know that there's an obligation of the city to do the sidewalks, right? We all know that.
Yeah.
Because there's liability if we don't.
Can I
Simple.
say, and you're absolutely right, I don't think any of that gets very far, okay? we need to have somebody sit up here now, because we've given 4 or 5 different ways we could do that to get the sidewalks done. They need to tell us, and we need to write it in here. This is the way we're gonna do it.
Go across the hall and ask Mark to come over here real quick.
Ron has an answer. He gave me all this information from the past. He doesn't have the authority.
I said, Mark.
Well,
I can go check. I can see
Thanks,
if it's
Irene.
available or not.
Thank you.
Be nice to. Okay, well, let's go to an easy thing on this one. Mr. Delacos recommends striking the first sentence. I think that makes a lot of sense. That's first sentence.
Yeah, I have that marked, that
What
I
is-
think
what is
we
it?
had discussed that.
yeah, we did.
Yeah.
discuss
We did
First
discuss
sentence
it.
is just creating the name of the,
The
Right.
renaming the thing, yes, I,
that doesn't, I mean, we don't need it still in there.
Where is it?
right, but
Very
I
first
don't,
sentence.
I don't have a record that we actually
Sentence of
voted
what?
on it.
26.
I don't have a record that we voted
It's
to
a,
accept that.
it's just saying the Street and Sidewalk Improvement Investment Fund shall be renamed the Sidewalk Improvement Fund.
That's repetitious.
That's right, we don't need it.
You don't need
So-
streets.
But to take it out, I need a motion, a second, and an affirmative vote, so.
So moved.
So
Second,
moved, second,
The whole
okay.
sentence?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
very
it's
first
it's just saying what the new name will be, but it's already, you already have created
Done
the
it,
new
yeah.
name. so
It's
you don't- still need it in
repetitive.
there.
It was important last time, it's not important anymore, it got renamed. Okay, any further discussion? No, can we call the vote on that one, Michelle?
Dr. Bugavalis?
Yes.
Ms. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Kaskoudas?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Chair Colianis?
Yes.
Chair Root?
Yes. Okay, that one's done, yes. Okay, so,
Should be no less than.
what's that?
I'm just talking to myself, I'm sorry. Looking at the next sentence, so the amount withdrawn from the fund is less, should be no less than the amount appropriated.
Well, that's the
Well,
problem.
the Board of Commissioners by resolution may direct the withdrawal and use the balance of the fund, provided that the amount withdrawn from the fund is less than or equal to the amount appropriated in the
So if
city's
you
capital
appropriate
improvement budget program for
$50,000,
sidewalks.
that's all that's removed from the fund.
He's gonna step out, he's in a meeting, but he's gonna step out and come
Okay.
for just a couple minutes in here.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Amount withdrawn from the
I
fund.
think the
is-
Right,
English
so what it
is
means
correct?
is, they can take up to 100, but if the city only budgets 50, they can only draw 50.
Right.
Yeah.
That's,
So we'll leave
it's the
it at-
budgeting issue is what
Right.
the issue is.
So
Spending issue is their issue, not the budget.
Well,
I'm
it's budget- it's
comfortable
spending,
with
right.
leaving it as a match, because that's motivation.
Yes.
So you want it so going back to what
I'm okay with removing the limit, but I'd like to maintain the match at this point.
so
Something, just so they can build it.
So by putting the amount withdrawn from the fund is no less than the amount less than the amount appropriated by the city. So the city has to appropriate no less than, if the city pulls out 500, it's no less than that. If the city budget's 500, they can't pull out no less than. So they have to match.
All you have to do is change
Well, I
that
think it
second
says
sentence.
that.
The amount withdrawn does not exceed the city's capital or general fund contribution per fiscal year. Right?
Hi.
Heard me throwing things at the wall, listening to
Yay.
y'all.
Hey, we
All
want to
right,
give you some money to spend, man.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming, Mr. City Manager. We were discussing our favorite
I
topic,
heard.
sidewalk
I was
fund.
listening.
Oh, okay, so the
Even with
thing
my other
is,
meeting going on, I had it on low, so I probably missed the last 10 minutes a little bit because I got a meeting going on right now.
so what can we do to encourage? this-
Problem is the match and the limit. That's
All right,
all
so-
that's held anybody back is the match and the limit, because we can't always budget 200, 300,000 to get a 300,000 match. We just can't if you want to do other things in the budget. So if the match was off, or maybe you match 100 and you can pull 200, 300, whatever it is. The two problems, even when I think we told them when we did the thing, the problem is the matching and the limit of we have to stop at $100,000. Fix those two things and we're good.
But Mark, you know that you can draw the 100 by matching the 100, right?
Yes.
But there's nothing in the charter that says you can't put in 200 and take 100, or put in 300 and take 100.
Right.
You knew that, right?
Yes.
Okay, there's your question to, somebody asked that
Yes,
question.
but if you got everything, you can look at all the budgets the last few years and stuff and what's needed in the budget. They're not those extra 200,000. And remember, you got brick roads you got to deal with, and talk about the cost that's gone up when we try to do the brick roads also, which has always been connected.
But this fund isn't for brick roads.
I know it, but you still have to account for that in the budget when we're doing the streets.
So your general
Yeah.
fund budget.
So here's the question. So the city's sitting on, let's say, $1.7 million for sidewalks. Okay. The concern is this, is that, let's say all this money starts getting exhausted for sidewalks. How does the city, to preserve and maintain the level of sidewalks, after you've made all these repairs and spent all this money, how does the city look at budgeting to make sure that they don't have to go back to a charter to force a sidewalk fund again, and that the city's allocating appropriate resources to maintain the sidewalks appropriately? Without, again, this was done, they had to do this because, this is obviously before my time, because it wasn't being done. And I don't think they want to have to go back to a charter to do this, but how as a charter committee, do we look to you as a city manager, say, okay, you exhaust the money, what is being done from the city's manager's desk to make sure, or when a budget comes around, to allocate the sufficient resources to make sure these sidewalks don't go back into that type of disrepair?
Again, it'd go back to the city manager and commission thing. Where is the budget going to be in 5 years? I don't imagine, where is it going to be, what we're going to have to allot to and stuff. So, but you'd start planning now. If you estimate that in 5 years we're going to exhaust that money, 3 years you're going to exhaust that money, you'd be able to start planning now when the money is at zero, what you'll have to budget to keep things going. But it's hard to mandate because you just, if you mandate and 300,000 has to go into a charter, and in 27, 28, you don't have that $300 to put in that budget, or you're going to cut another project.
I think that's where we're at. That's kind of what we're trying to deal with, is how do we take, like, we're talking about taking the cap off. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fine, and the funds get exhausted. But how does that, I guess.
Let me try it.
Go ahead.
Mark, I know you're getting ready to retire, and I know somewhere you're going to be drinking Mai Tais with little umbrellas in them. But if the city, if the cap were taken off and the city had $1.7 million to build new sidewalks, repair sidewalks, at the end of that time, what's the sweet spot for a requirement? 400,000, 300,000? You're going to spend $1.7 million, and then at the end of that time, you're going to have a requirement. I mean, maybe you will, maybe you won't have a requirement to fund the budget for sidewalk repairs and improvements annually.
First of all, you'd set up a plan. The thing whoever's after me to do would set up a plan. Let's say it's in 5 years, doing a whole analysis of every sidewalk and what we need to use. How much is that for the 5 years we're going to use? How much money is left there? And then when we've got them all fixed, what is that sweet spot number? And I don't think without a lot of study and looking and doing it, you're going to know it for this charter. You may know it for the next charter what to do, but I'm not so sure you're going to. But I don't think you can go anywhere over 100, 200,000 without hamstringing some of the projects that may need to go in if you get it done. I just don't see that. You set a limit. After this gets done, you have to do $300,000 for sidewalks. I just don't think that's practical to hamstring a budget in the future. It may be good to do that in the future, but to hamstring a budget, and what you do is you lose other projects. Now, maybe they're projects that, okay, you lose them, so what? The sidewalks are important, but that's just a decision that needs a lot of work and a lot of study before you absolutely mandate something.
So there's
We're
a
doing
million
that to you
seven.
now.
There's,
We mandated that you put so much money in this fund, and then you could start drawing it back after that time.
And again, if we had to take 100,000 from the city, which is okay, but if we were allowed to get 200,000 or 300,000 to go with that 100,000, that would have been better than just cutting up. Now, you can come up with 3 and then you'll get 3. Well, we haven't had 3 in a budget to come up with 3. So we couldn't budget 300,000 for sidewalks to match 300 because that other $200,000 had to go somewhere else. So if it was something like the city had to put the first 100, but then they could draw whatever, unlimited, up to 300, up to something else, you could have got these past years some projects done, because you just make a list and you go, the money runs out, and then the next time the ones come up. So if you had more of allotment of that money, because you still have to mandate city money going in, if you had the allotment, okay, I really need to get $300,000 done. I put in 100 from the city, but I can get 200 from that fund to supplement it. If that's how that worked and stuff, you'd have seen a lot more in the last 5 years, and you'd have seen it done if that was the capability to be able to get more fund without putting the match.
Is there, we got a list of the streets from what you did in the past year. Is there a list that says how many streets need to be done, and you could possibly come to this board and say, I can do everything for $2 million, let me have your $2 million? Is there something like that? You could bring contractors in and say, do these damn streets, finish them up.
It probably takes some work getting that, but
How does it take, how do we find out, or I mean, how do you find out how many actual streets, how many actual sidewalks need redoing or repairing?
Well, that would need an assessment, as he said.
that's why I said the whole thing with this, whatever the charter ends the language being, first thing we would need to do, however you put the structures, we'd have to do a full-fledged study going out, what we can do now, what we can get done, and do it.
I would want to spend the money on studies.
no,
I'm not talking about, I don't like consultants, I don't like spending money on studies.
yeah.
It's something we could do mostly in-house.
Yeah, so-
It's just time and effort in-house.
So at this point, being able to take the cap off would help in the short term, in the next 3 to 5, it'll satisfy
Yes, it'd help.
for the next 3 to 5 year.
Match, not more than 100,000,
No,
and take the cap
no,
off.
just take the cap off, and that would
Flip
get the sidewalks in the next 3 to 5 years where they probably need to be.
But not if you make us have the match for that extra amount of money. I'm not so sure
No,
that match money is available.
What about flipping the match? That's what you suggested.
What do you mean flipping the match?
In other words, have 100,000 from the city budget, but like 300,000 from the.
That's what I was saying. That's the same
Right,
thing.
that's what I'm saying. It's kind of flipping what's in the chart.
That's the same thing I'm saying.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
We're saying the same
Agreeing
thing.
with you.
Okay, we're saying the same thing.
Right.
so Mark, try this one.
Okay.
And see if the next city manager's hair is going to catch on fire.
Okay.
There's $1.7 million. If you divide that by 5, that's about $340,000 a year. Okay, so if you budgeted $340,000 a year for the next 5 years, and then we put in the charter, you had to continue to budget $340,000, $350,000, mandated.
Yes, that's probably too much on a mandate. Now, 150, and again, wherever everything goes, you know where things are now and the prices, everything. You don't know where they're going to go in 5 years, so.
But what would the $340,000 do for you for 5 years? For your public works guys?
You get a lot of sidewalks done
I have a
during the first year.
I have a kind of logistical question, and this just comes from observing the guys, and don't get me wrong, they do a wonderful job, and they've been in my neighborhood a couple times, and they really do pick out the stuff that's messed up, and it's very, what's necessary they do, so I understand it's complicated to figure out and pull a number out of the air. But at least in my neighborhood, when they were patching sidewalks or replacing sections, it was city crews actually doing the work. Is that the way it generally
That was
happens?
to help save the money, to have more money to do more sidewalks.
But if we
Do nice work.
pour more money towards it, is the city going to have the manpower to continue to do that, to stretch those dollars? Or are we going to wind up getting a contractor to do it? And then it probably costs us twice as much to do what we're doing.
Twice. More than twice.
Again, you know, there are some things you can bring in different times of pricing, and some times the pricing you can get better prices on things. They may be able to use to supplement as given done, but we wouldn't turn over to contractors to supplement it getting done. But they could help us with some things on a good, reasonable price, because I don't think the guy after me is going to pay double of what we could do. So, but if you get some for maybe 15, 20% increase, and either they did the patching, they did some things, and you get the economy of bid to not be that much of a difference, but to get it done, not only more done, but to get it done faster. That's what you'd evaluate when you look for a piggyback on a bridge when you're piggybacking on a bid for sidewalks. A city, somebody gets a great bid on sidewalks and stuff, and wow, that's only about 15, 20 of us doing it, and they can get it done. You jump on that piggyback, and all of a sudden, that's what you watch for. When we're doing it ourselves, it's usually not a good piggyback to go out there and get, and we know we bid as a little city, we're going to get garbage prices. But the bigger cities, when they bid, and if they have to honor the piggyback, we take advantage of the bulk price they gave for the city of Clearwater, and we're able to get that same price for the sidewalks here. So that's where we could jump, and for not losing a lot of money, not only get more done, but get them done faster. And city crews could work on what they're doing now.
They could.
That would be the strategy
that's-
that I would use.
So,
That makes sense.
Mark, where is sidewalk repair in the overall importance to the city? I mean, from the citizens' perspective, it was so important that in 1983, they put the sidewalk fund in as a mandate in the charter. We have issues with sidewalks still today. As a matter of fact, I heard at either the last commission meeting or the one before that, when you were talking budgets, that one of the requests, please fix the main steps at Spring Bayou. I mean, those are so frequently used and such a focal point, and they're crumbling and a mess. So, and you talk about, well, we'd probably only have 100 or 200,000 anyway from the city budget. Your city budget has gone up so much that the unassigned fund, which has not been withdrawn from, has decreased from 32% of the general budget to 24% over the last 5 years, okay? So you've had a tremendous increase, but it seems that funding sidewalk repair is not a concern. How do we make it a concern of the city manager? I mean, it's important. It's
Again,
important to the citizens, and I know that you
wanna
got a
come in,
million
but
other projects,
I
but
don't want to argue with you, but I
Okay.
just don't agree with that assessment. A lot of the assessment, I don't agree with it's not important. You got 100
Okay.
important things in the city you got to balance the money for. The problem with the unassigned, we were sitting good with the unassigned because our budget was a certain amount. When all the costs went up on the budget, remember that assigned got shorter.
I know, that's-
So
but-
without
but
having
it-
to put it in,
it says a lot about the increase in the size of your budget and the increase in the amount of money the city has to spend every year. Yet there hasn't been additional investment in sidewalk repair. That's stayed flat, and that's where my question is
problem
coming
was
from.
they put $2 million to hold and want us to build sidewalks on the interest, which was back in the day when
Oh,
they
well,
did
we-
this.
we-
it was
we
a
took
decent,
that-
yeah, it was a decent idea, but that's where you started with a thing. 2 million stays, and you live off the interest. And you can build a bunch of sites, use the interest, don't touch the principal.
Right. Well,
But
that
I mean,
didn't
back
work
in the
5
time, there's
years
nothing
ago
about
in
back in the
Youngstown.
time. Back in the time, that was a good prospect. Just the world changed, and it's not a good process.
So, well, we're asking two things. One is how to get our sidewalks improved, and you've shared your insights on that.
If
And then
the city
second
puts
was,
100,000, they can draw up the 300,000 for the fund, something like that, and you see next year's budget with a whole lot of sidewalks worked on and going through.
But what happens
Or
if-
after it passes, after the.
and then what happens when the sidewalk fund's depleted?
Well, that's what you have to do a whole plan on to see theoretically what's the projection of what you need to do, how long that money's got to last, and then you have to the commission and the city, they have to set up a plan that money doesn't, some source of money or some dedication of money is going to have to be done to do the sidewalks afterward, however that is. There's got to be some, but it's hard to put a number and do an assessment now because times change so much. So. But the next charter committee would be in a better place to look at that. You just have better numbers if it went through.
It's a possibility, there's a way to get around that. And we can approve whatever we decide to improve now. And your study on what it's really going to take could come in a year.
Yes.
The Board of Commissioners could ask us to reconvene.
Yes, they can.
convene, and then we can change that to make it work.
They can. They can.
Or they can budget sidewalk repair and not have to reconvene.
Yep, they could do that too.
Now, there's a novel thought.
Doesn't work that way, guys.
All right.
I gotta head back
Do we
home.
have any other questions?
Thank you,
I'll
Mike.
be there, finish that one. I'll be over there when I, so.
All right.
Turn that up a little bit so you can hear when we need
All
you.
right.
Thanks,
Thank
Mark.
you for your time today.
Man, talk to me about wanting to change anything.
Well, we got a great communication going on this because it's a master problem, you know, and it's not easy to resolve. And we don't have to resolve it today. We can talk about it for 2 more hours and then come back. And it's so important that we don't want to rush into it.
Yeah. And
Yes, sir.
you represent a number of cities. Any other cities have a sidewalk improvement fund?
Not in the charter.
See, our problem is that it wasn't being taken care of. And what Mike said, well, you know, at some point, maybe the citizens, if we depleted it and we didn't have anything, that the citizens will rise up and demand it. Well, that's what happened. So here we are, and what we have is a situation where Carrie, to your point, is where is the priority level on the sidewalks? I mean, you're right about the steps around the bayou. I mean, and they don't seem to be wanting to go up on the, much anyway, on the 100 contribution. 150 was what I heard. So, I mean, it just about talked me out of changing it, leave some bitch the way it is.
I mean, could,
Well, we have,
And it eventually gets depleted, and then somebody's gonna have to,
okay.
The
So
truth
they're in the budget process right now. So next year it's going to be, you know, that's Mark's mandate, Mark's party right now. And this doesn't go for vote until next March anyway.
This
And if-
doesn't, yeah.
This doesn't. So the thing is, you know, what guidelines and encouragement do we want to provide to the next city manager coming in? How do we want to, is there anything we need to do in the charter to move interest in maintaining the city sidewalks along? As the attorney said, it's a liability issue. All we need
It's
is a good
liability,
lawsuit, right?
And usually it is actually what Mike said, it's complaint driven. People come up to meetings and they go, have you seen the sidewalk over here? It needs to be repaired. And the city manager goes, okay, we'll take care of it. That's how, I mean, honestly, that's how everybody else handles it. Now, there's a plan to do every sidewalk over a period of time. It's part of probably the 5-year plan. And it's just a question of which ones have to be done before the others. But it's always part of the budget. I mean, it's an ongoing problem, like you said.
Yeah, but it's an ongoing problem that they're only allocating $100,000.
But they're only allocating 100,000 because I think that's what they feel they could get done during that fiscal year. based on the other projects and the other priorities. I 100% understand what you're saying, but it's usually complaint-driven.
Yep.
That's no way to run a city.
Well, I guess we need to start complaining, huh?
Well, or it's part of a plan.
Right.
I think, for example, one of my clients just finished theirs. I think it took them 5 years to do all the sidewalks. And of course, now they begin again.
Well, so that's something we could do, is we could require the sidewalks to be maintained on a 5-year cycle. We could put that in the charter. We could put in the charter larger reverse match, you know, where if they're only going to allocate 150,000 and we think that they've got workload for about 500,000, we could, you know, do a 2-for-1 or 3-for-1 match.
I don't know how, I'm sorry. I don't know how we can require a city manager to do a study.
I don't want one.
We can't.
It's the only way we'll salvage this. We have to know how much has to be done to figure out how to spend the money.
Well, that's really,
Right.
isn't that really Tom telling you, this is, we have to do X amount?
And that's a moving target.
Right.
It's a moving
constantly
target.
moving, because there's a tree that right now is bringing up one of the sidewalks.
Yeah.
The roots are doing it. I mean, it just happens all the time. Somebody runs into, like John said, somebody runs over it. I mean, I'm sure that's happening today.
So,
But we don't know how many of that is happening or has already
Well, I
happened.
think that's Tom's answer to you. Tom's the one who's going to say, here, I mean, I know he said the amounts, right? But he didn't tell you that right now we have $200,000 worth that are really in bad shape and need to be done right now.
So
well, we have 600,000
Right. that
this
was-
year and 800,000 next year.
But he's not telling you
That
you're not
need to
hearing
be
which-
done. That's
That
the
need to be
plan,
done, but
yes.
what is that?
So,
He needs to be done and then needs to be done.
so typically sidewalks, like you said, are complaint driven, because I don't think anybody drives around the city to look at sidewalks. They know there are sections of sidewalks that are visibly have to be repaired or replaced. But as a general rule, nobody from the city does drive every street in Tarpon Springs to look at sidewalks. So it's complaint driven, because there may be a small 5-foot section, 10-foot section that needs to be addressed. So that will continue to happen. And so looking at what do we do, what do we change? Because that's why we're here. I know we talked about removing the cap. So if we remove the cap, whether it's 3 or reverse the amount, if you want to make sure that that fund goes over time, they don't spend it in 1 year. If you want to reverse it to that, you know, up to X number of dollars or 3 times whatever the city budgets or 4 times whatever the city budgets for sidewalk improvement, you know, what if the city doesn't budget anything for that year? I see that, I don't see that, and I understand from Mark's perspective is, you know, it may be, you know, we may have a plan to replace sidewalks, but something else may come up that affects our budget for that year, and we can't spend those funds for sidewalks because, you know, we've got, you know, sewer mains that we, all of a sudden that are breaking, we have to replace, so we have to pull funds from somewhere. And that may be taken from the sidewalk. So it's a slippery slope, but at a minimum, you know, I think I'd feel comfortable if we remove the cap, or the alternative, besides removing the cap, if you want to allocate an amount to, you know, not to exceed 300% of what the city budgets, which if they budget 100, it's 300. If it's, you know, or 3 times whatever the city budgets. And that way you sort of, and I understand, maintain your fund for a longer period of time instead of having to go through.
Incentivize to spend it
To
that way.
three
So
times.
what about the possibility of, it's roughly $340,000 a year for 5 years, that sort of kicks the can down the road to the next charter revision committee.
Second.
but we have a requirement that they need to do an in-house study by the time that next panel is impaneled, so that you have the information to make a logical decision of how to fund it into the future at that point.
I think that's the only way
think-
we're gonna get out of
Because
Uh,
here.
we don't have the
Say
info.
that the amount withdrawn does not exceed 340,000 per physical year.
Yeah, what you said makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
It's-
or if you want to put it that way.
It's
Either
simple.
one.
They need to still match at least 100 to get it. Let's
Oh.
leave that. And,
No, when we bring this amount down, are they gonna have to start putting the 100 grand back into it?
No.
No, they'll decide that at the
Okay,
next
so
charter.
what? Okay,
Pick
so
that
Merle,
candidate.
you're right, the
Comes to
340,
400.
the
If you ma- if-
340,
By that
the
point,
340 gets us to the end of 5 years when the new charter revision comes. But if we put in there that they have to, if the fund is depleted, they have to put in 340 per year, that gets them to 5 years, and if it's not gonna work, they can bring it up then and change it.
So what you're saying is the city's got to put in 100, and we will triple the match. That actually makes 400 a year, 400,000 a year.
340.
440.
440. It'll be 440.
and actually a little more than that, because there'll be some interest. No idea what it's
And
getting.
then what
but
about
All
requiring?
right, now it's pretty good. It's about
Budget 340 after that.
80,000 a year.
In the future.
I have a problem with that.
You need to be very specific. This is
When
in
they
the
get you to
charter.
5 years,
Yeah.
and it could be changed then if it's not gonna
Well,
work.
the thing is, I,
Or just let it go away.
let it go away. I think the 340 a year, or, you know, I would make it a round number instead of 340, because this is,
300, yeah.
yeah, 300 or 350, whatever. But a round number, because, you know, someone said, why 340? Why did they think of
Because we
340?
divided 5
I
into
know,
1.7.
we know why, but you got to look at the person who's voting. You know, so that means the city would be spending a minimum of 400,000 a year.
And it leaves you a balance and nobody knows what to do with it, because
It'll exhaust itself at Ward 5 years from now. It may be 6 or 7 years before that's all exhausted.
Well, and to address your concern about going into the future, we could say that after that point, the future charter revision committee will address
that's fine.
continuing to fund it at a reasonable level or something like that.
Can you put,
Re-examine.
can you put in the charter that this section shall be reviewed and updated? But they're doing it anyway, so it doesn't
They're going to
matter.
review it anyway. You just can't make them do anything.
Yeah, okay, all right.
I tell you what, in 1983, those guys were geniuses.
Okay, so. You must have been on that committee back then.
The city just didn't follow what we asked them to do, that's all.
So, Madam Chair, is our recommendation then to obviously remove the cap and,
Yeah, no, we're not removing it.
no, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're going to remove the $100,000.
You're not removing the cap.
No,
you're
we're changing
the
it.
cap.
Well, amending it to reflect that, that the city shall be, you want to require them to allocate $100,000?
I don't, Merle does, that's fine.
Okay.
I don't want to let them off the hook completely.
That's fine, Merle. I'll go
Okay.
on with it.
That the city shall allocate $100,000 a year to a sidewalk improvement fund,
The city.
A minimum of.
a minimum of $100,000, and they would be able to, and at that point, the city would, or the sidewalk improvement fund would match up to $300,000, or 3 times.
I think what you want to say, the amount withdrawn does not exceed
3 times.
$300,000.
In that
to
fiscal
be-
year.
to, Let's see, the amount does not exceed.
Okay, so let me phrase this,
Okay.
okay? Because this is one thing I do well.
Okay,
We're going to require the city to have, if they're going to access the funds in the sidewalk fund, they have to budget for $100,000 in sidewalk improvements. The amount withdrawn from the fund is less than or equal to $300,000 annually. right?
a
Because we're
great idea.
requiring them to do this in order to access the fund. If they want to access the fund, they have to put $100,000 in. If they do that, they can take out up to $300,000 for that fiscal year,
That's the
okay?
idea.
They don't have to. They could have a $300,000 budget, put $100,000, take 200 out, but they can't take 500,000 out, okay?
Yeah.
And then I think the provision in terms of what the fund should not be used for needs to stay there. And I also think, I like the idea of putting a requirement in to do a sidewalk plan,
Well, that's
be
just-
completed by 2029.
That's just a recommendation. You can't put that in the charter, right?
I wouldn't.
Okay, well, I have under the recommendations for BOC, set up plan for future funding for sidewalk improvements.
They have to spend 300 then, plus their 100.
Yeah, they'll give them a budget of 400,000.
They
If they
took-
get to 3, they got to spend 1, is basically what
Yeah.
we're saying.
Okay,
Or they'll get to 4, actually.
they're getting 4, actually.
Because they'll have their 1 plus.
Plus
Now,
3
they
more.
get to 3 and they put it in their
They got to
accounts.
spend 1.
Yeah.
That 3 and 1 is 4.
Right.
You're sharp.
Yeah, I wasn't really good at math.
Get my calculator.
Okay, so,
One other thing is if they get to 3 and put it in there, and they put their 100 in there, but they'll only spend 200,000 that year. Do they get 300 for the next year?
If they
no,
use it.
that's not how that's written.
Yeah, I mean-
The amount withdrawn from the fund, I think we keep these words. The amount withdrawn for the fund is less than or equal to 3 times the $100,000 that they put up.
The public's not going to understand that. You need to use real numbers, Carrie.
I'm sorry, I can't
The
hear you.
public is not going to understand that. You need to use real numbers. You need to say that they want 300, they got to put in 100.
Right, okay. So they got to put in 100. The amount withdrawn from the fund has to be expended and can be up to 300,000.
$300,000 from the fund,
Yeah.
up to $300,000 from the sidewalk improvement.
I
And
could
has
say-
to be expended in that
Yeah,
year.
you could say if the city budgets $100,000 from the general fund for sidewalk improvements, they can draw up to $300,000 from the sidewalk improvement fund.
Did you capture that, Mr. Salzman?
I did.
Good.
I'm sure when you
All right.
read the language, you'll make changes.
Yeah, that's right. You just, as long as you're capturing the thoughts now, you can make it real legal.
This was very good exercise. Thank you.
What's that?
This was a very good exercise.
Yeah,
think-
well, I think
I
it's, this went on for days last time.
Okay.
Okay, so I think, let me just poll, are you comfortable? Do you
Yes.
have any other suggestions?
No.
No.
I think this works.
Yeah.
Do you think that works?
That's good.
It's good. Mike,
Yes.
Merle? John, okay, we're all in agreement. Okay, can we get a motion for that?
I so move.
Okay.
Second.
All right, let's call the vote.
Dr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Ms. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Kuskudis?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Chair Colianis?
Yes.
Chair Root?
Yes. I'm so glad you say yes before me, because I know, but my name's the next one, because I can never hear what the name is. So I just wait. Okay, so the last thing on my list, I think, is OBE, based on the prior discussions. All right, so now we are on to ecological sustainability and possible building height sections. Does anyone need a break?
Yes.
Yes.
Aren't you proud of me? I remembered.
They just
All right. Let's go to 320.
Okay.
That's the guy from Ohio. It's the new.
We ready? All right,
Give me a
so,
dollar, I got to keep the change.
wait a minute. Here it is. Okay. I created this for me, I don't have it for you, but I just found I needed more room than what I had on my handout, so that's why I have this one and you don't, but,
Can I take this?
is that yours?
Yeah.
Or are you gonna talk to him?
Can I take it? Should I?
Go, call him back, why not? I'm just gonna do an intro, so.
Okay.
If the mayor needs to be put at the podium, I guess we can do that. All right, so we have two sections. One is, I should say potential new sections. One is on environmental sustainability, and our rationale for keeping this was to give sustainability teeth. The thoughts at this point are to require the city to create a plan and execute it for ecological sustainability for the preservation of desired features or species, i.e. mangrove, and the elimination of non-native invasive species, i.e. Brazilian pepper trees and Australian pines. And on top of that, we got emails, two separate ones. One from a person representing themselves as a concerned citizen of our city who is, Irene can't really find any record of her being a resident or property owner here, but asking for, what was it, the Citizens Bill of Rights. So you saw that, said emails, right? And then we saw a response back from, yes.
Yeah, Tommy Kiger, yeah.
Indicating that he didn't feel that,
It was necessary.
oh, Tom Kiger, that's right. He didn't feel that a Citizens Bill of Rights was necessarily necessary. And actually, I don't think he felt that, where I read it was that the environmental sustainability paragraph was, or section was not needed in the charter, but, so we've heard from that. As long as everybody's read it, we'll proceed with the conversation. If not, get up and let's find out, what did our mayor have to say, anything?
No, nothing of
But,
interest
okay.
to the, yeah.
All right. So let's kick this off again. I'm concerned that this is kind of a sidewalk equivalent.
No.
In other words,
Sidewalk
funding is
2.0.
not necessary, we all recognize that it's a big problem, but it's not perking up to the point where it actually gets, I don't want to say appropriate, that's pejorative. It's not getting the attention that some of our citizens feel it needs. Okay. So, do we put this in a charter section? I'm just going to poll everyone to see where we are on this topic. I'm starting with you, Tina.
Yeah, I read all this stuff, and while it seems like it's not a bad idea to have a Citizens Bill of Rights as a preamble to the charter.
All right, let's separate it into two things. Let's
Okay.
talk about the Bill of Rights, and then we'll talk about the environmental section, okay? So this poll is addressing the Citizens Bill of Rights. Do we need to look at putting it in as a preamble or addressing it in some other way?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
Bottom line.
that's fine.
I don't feel strongly about putting it in at all.
Okay,
I don't feel strongly because I really don't understand what she wants. And maybe our attorney could explain what Citizens Bill of Rights would be.
And my response is no, that's what the electoral process is for.
Second.
And I don't have strong feelings.
okay.
I mean, when I read it, I just felt like, well, if somebody's running for office and they don't have that in their head, they shouldn't be running.
I mean, if some other similar cities in the area have added such a thing, I'd be interested in hearing what they've added, perhaps.
Okay, so I will ask the attorney to speak on it. The other thing is, in the email, the memo she had a bunch of links that my internet browser was not letting me get to because they said they were dangerous for one reason or another. So Irene generously printed the references out, and that's this bunch of stuff. If you have an interest, it's there. It's very repetitive. It is things that have been adopted, but I don't necessarily see that it's in charters.
But she also she lives in Lutz.
This one is Home Rule Charter, and that's North Miami Beach. But anyway,
Yeah, a lot of those were from South Florida
Right.
that she was referencing.
Yeah.
And it is exactly what, I mean, I could understand it maybe in a bigger, real big city where people don't feel like they have any voice to make sure that those rights are protected, but you don't have that in this city. In this city, everybody's had an opportunity to speak and their voice is heard. The commission responds to them, the city responds, so I don't think it's necessary.
right, you can
in
get
a-
in to talk to the city manager, you can talk to the mayor, you can talk
Right.
to anyone of the commissioners. Yeah, I'm kind of, that's where I am on this stuff.
But I thought it was interesting. It's an interesting thing to have, but it's like you said, it's a political aspect, and it's more of, when you're an elected official, how do you make sure that the residents are being heard and how they feel comfortable with how the system's going.
Okay, well,
I'd
So-
like to make a motion to adopt the Citizens Bill of Rights.
Bill of Rights, so if we, if we vote against it, we decline putting it in?
Correct.
Is that it? Okay, everybody understand that?
You have to make a motion in the positive.
Actually, you don't have to do anything.
No, we
Okay.
don't, we can just
not-
decline.
It's not something that you have brought forward. It's not one of our charter sections.
It's not even a citizen that brought it forward.
Right.
Right,
Right.
they're not we don't think they're a resident of
Right.
It's mostly signs from Lutz or Safety Harbor.
So I will ask this, if,
Property owner,
if,
but I
if,
couldn't find anything in the property appraisal.
I am hearing there is basically no strong interest to put any word like this in the charter. So I am going to table that for the next charter review. If they want to take it up, they can. We are done with that. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are we all in agreement with that?
So
Okay,
I'll retract the motion.
thank you. Well, it never got seconded, so it
Right.
died.
Died for
Died without a
Die for lack of
second.
a second.
Died for lack of a second.
John's
Okay,
face was
so,
worth it.
yeah. All right, so that takes the citizen's right and response off the table. Now, the second one was to require the city to create a plan and execute it for ecological sustainability. I'm going to poll on that one right now. Tina,
Well,
restart?
it just seemed to me, from what Mr. Feiger, what was his name, said, is that it's already, they already have a plan and are following it, so I'm not sure that we need this.
Right. Excuse me, I tend to listen to the people that are sitting in the midst of it, and Tommy Feiger is, and he didn't feel it was necessary in the charter, so I'm going to go along with that.
I read it, and I think he's out in left field. From what he said, would be better, he'd be better off if it was in the charter, because there's no guarantee on what they're saying.
It's
They-
getting, to
apparently
get
they-
funded, yeah.
Apparently, they don't have a director. They had one, but they haven't replaced it. It's been a year this month, and they want us to stay away. I'm going, maybe we'll listen.
Now, I'm interested in hearing Mike, because this
Okay,
is a.
this is
real
this is
close
important
to-
to me, and I think it needs to be in the charter because this is sidewalk 2.0. If you look at some of the things that he's put in there about ordinances, but the ordinances affect private property owners, they don't affect the city. Here's a provision in there where the city's going to come up with a plan, an implementation of a plan, but it doesn't talk about funding, it doesn't talk about any requirements. that the city even have, or, you know, whether or not they even budget any, you know, they could have a plan and don't budget it. You know, we all have plans that may not have any teeth to it. You know, I think this is long overdue. You know, the implementation, you know, if they've been looking at this for quite some time, I don't see any proactive removal of invasive species. I will tell you, I don't know who I heard this from, but I think they only allocated maybe last year $40,000 towards this. And I think the different departments are at odds, and this is from my scuttlebutt that I hear, as to where did the money come from, because they don't want it to come out of their particular budget. You know, well, I don't want to spend that money because it comes out of my budget. You spend the money because it comes out of your budget. And so there's a you know, a tug of war. Yeah, they want to see it, but nobody wants to spend the money for it out of their particular budget. So I think by requiring it in the charter and mandating it, the ordinances are fine with regard to private property owners. I think we already have those in place, that if you're going to develop property, that you have to remove those invasive species to develop. One of the things I learned, ironically, is if you have a lot and you don't develop it, you're not required to remove the invasive species. So let's say I'm planning a subdivision and I've got a wetland, and this actually, I think this happened, and I do a plat of the subdivision, and I create lot 1, for example, and lot 1 is a wetland. All right, so I develop all the other properties, but I don't develop lot 1. And lot 1, the wetlands is fraught with invasive species. Guess what? I don't have to touch it. And
And let me guess, they've taken the per house, per acre, they're utilizing that acreage in order to get smaller.
but the allocation of the wetland is a lot. And so because,
That's a proper
Yeah, that's
interpretation
just
of
so
the code.
wrong.
but I'm suggesting to you that happened. Now, historically, that's happened. You know, today, I don't know if they can get away with it, or anybody can get away with it, but,
The new code, I don't think allows that.
all right, but that has happened, and there's one subdivision in particular that has a property that was private and that was developed all around it, but that particular wetland was untouched and not required to remove invasive species because it was not buildable. They did not build on it. So, you know, that's for an ordinance change. That's not a charter affect a charter. But I think as much as we looked at requiring certain performance with regard to sidewalks, I think we should demand the same performance when it comes to invasive species. So I think it ought to be in the charter.
Your turn, buddy.
Okay.
Merle, your turn.
I-
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
I agree, it's important, and we need some way to manage it. I'm not sure exactly how to go about mandating it, though.
John?
We touched on this before, and I thought we had said that what we were going to say, because you can't micromanage just everything, you know, that I thought we were just going to say that the city should appoint a sustainability committee and the city shall adopt a sustainability plan, and leave it at that, and let the committee and the city, you know, flesh out the plan, and the citizens and the citizens committee flesh it out with the input of Mike, whoever, you know, keeps the charter clean, and you just can't, and it gets, Mike, back to the same thing with Mark. How much money are you gonna budget? And how much are they gonna squawk if you tell them to budget, oh, we can't do that? But if you give them the committee, like the Planning and Zoning Board, whatever you wanna call it, the Sustainability Board, Sustainability Committee, Citizens Committee, and that the city's to adopt a sustainability plan, that puts it on the table, it puts it in the charter, and it keeps it clean, and people can pressure from the outside how much does it mean to the community, they get the pressure.
So, Madam Chair?
Yes.
So, I agree that the charter can demand that they come up with a plan, and they're working on the plan. Okay, so that may satisfy what the charter would require. But should it say that it would not only come up with a plan, but how do you, I mean, you need to allocate resources for the plan. And I understood what Mark said is, look, when you've got certain things that you have to pay for, you know, adding another line item may make it difficult when it comes to budgeting. But the thing is, John, is if they've not been, just like the sidewalks, you know, they weren't addressed financially, they weren't addressed. And they may have had a sidewalk plan back in 80, whatever, but they never spent the money. They never did anything. They may have had a plan. But even so, they may have had a plan, okay? And so how do we put language in there that the city shall allocate sufficient resources with regard to implementation of the plan? So you could have a plan, but are they going to allocate any resources for it? And so I think merely telling them, look, you got to have a sustainability committee and have a plan, great, but what are you going to do with the plan?
Well, you could say that you can have the sustainability committee, you can have, have they already adopted a plan, sustainable plan?
It says they're working
Well,
on it.
the sustainability plan does not go exhaustively into invasive species. They're looking at other sustainability issues. That's the issue.
You could say that they have to adopt, evidently they've already adopted, I was gonna say that they have to adopt the plan within 2 years and implement the plan over 5.
I think 5's too long. I think they've been working on it.
Too.
Well, no, but they've been working on it. I mean,
I'm talking about implement the plan, the goals, implement the goals, policies, and objectives of the plan over a 5-year period.
I don't think it's that hard to allocate a crew with chainsaws and a wood chipper to go out and start cutting down Brazilian peppers.
Where do you want them cut down?
Where do you want me to start? Mears?
Where do you want to start?
Start on Mears.
Mears?
Okay, start on Mears.
There's a few of them
Yeah, you could spend a year in Mears. You know.
there. You know, it's,
But that would be up to the plan. The plan would dictate where the priority is.
well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Let them
Irene,
adopt
could
the
you
plan.
pull it up?
What's sustainability?
But not wait 5 years to implement it.
Pull it up from
You don't wait 5 years, Mike. You implement from day one. Year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5.
You know, I mean, I agree with you about the invasive species, but I think it's a little too narrow to be a charter item, and maybe it should be a part of a larger thing about sustainability. But maybe you can have language just to mention covering things like invasive species, blah, 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 blah.
But
You
if
know,
you-
as part of it.
You could go to the committee, lobby for those things to be put in the plan, not in the charter. You lobby for those. I'm not disagreeing that the Brazilian peppers and things need to be taken care of. It's like, you could list a million things in the charter or in the sustainability plan, but if you just say they have to have a plan and implement the plan and let the community develop the plan, certainly you're not the only guy in town who wants Brazilian peppers.
No, but we didn't just call it Brazilian peppers. We just called it invasive species.
Well, whatever.
To
But you
plan
lobby
to-
the committee to put it in the plan as a section in the plan, invasive species elimination, control, whatever. That's where I'm at.
Yep. I'm sorry.
It sounds like, I read this 2 or 3 times, then I Googled it, trying to figure out what they really wanted, because they've outlined something that they have is basically what they really want, but they want to wait until these two, land development code and the other one, that Renee runs.
Some of that, Jimmy, the reason I asked for it to wait is the things that Mike brought up are addressed in the land development code. Like if somebody builds a house or somebody puts in something that they have to
Was there a certain page?
take all that stuff out.
But this is not,
On the site.
yeah, but that's with regard to private property owners.
But we don't know what the land development code, the new one, is gonna say as far as public property. Maybe it's being addressed, maybe that's what they're trying to say,
Well,
Jim.
basically, they want to wait until it's done because they feel like what they want is going to be in there. But
How about,
I'm wary if anybody says I don't want it in the charter, because the charter has a teeth to enforce, and it makes things happen.
How
So
would you
when they
word
tell
it?
me they don't want it,
Well, that's why we're here.
Word it, Jimmy.
how was what?
How would you word it?
I would word it like, it's a commission problem, not a charter problem. The commission, Board of Commissioners are responsible for all of these. They're the ones who should be dealing with it, not us.
Yeah, but
That's what I'm saying, that you just say that there's a committee and they have to, and they have a plan and they have to adopt a plan,
quick?
Yeah, sure.
just like they have to adopt a comprehensive plan by law, right?
The plan.
You just say they have to have one.
You know,
You're not telling them what's in the plan, you're just saying they have to have one.
Yeah, you can't dictate what's in the plan.
what makes me wonder about the whole thing is that
Oh, yeah, here, natural. Here they talk about invasive species and categories of action.
read it over and over and over,
What do you
and
think, Rick, what I said?
we're
Just
not
adopt a
bad
plan.
people in the charter.
How do you put in the plan what the public?
Okay.
Right.
This
Can
is
you bring it down to the section, or do you have a hard time?
She's struggling.
okay. This is
The mouse
Flying pin.
this is what they said.
plate.
This is what they said. Part of their plan.
Can you click on the, just a minute, is that clickable?
This?
No, that next section where it comes and it identifies the areas that it addresses, so we can go see it again exactly.
So adopt.
Down that I
I'm
had?
sorry.
You had it up a minute
Yeah,
ago.
wasn't there?
1 second.
There.
There it is, right there.
Yeah, it's
Description.
not clickable, but
Description of action categories.
I
Yeah,
can
so
pull it
go to,
down.
if you do a Control
environment.
F and then type in
I
Section
think there-
1.
If she keeps scrolling, it'll be expanded.
Look, okay, natural environment, it includes controlling the spread of invasive species and promoting site-appropriate and Florida native species in landscape.
That's a mission statement.
Yeah.
That's a mission statement.
Description of action, yeah.
Okay,
you're right.
that's just a mission
Okay,
statement.
right.
That's not a
It's not a
requirement.
plan.
It's not a plan.
Yeah.
It's not a requirement.
Right.
It's just a mission statement.
If you put in there to implement the plan, that becomes a requirement.
Exactly. So here's their action plan that according to what their action plan is to adopt and enforce an ordinance requiring control of invasive species and use sustainable landscaping practices on all city properties. Okay? Use integrated pest management to limit the use of pesticides on city property, provide pesticide reduction awareness for community members and property owners. To me,
Back up.
that is a mission statement. That's a mission statement.
Where I was.
Okay? That's not a plan.
Right.
Okay.
I think. it
Yeah, I mean, this
sounds
was, if you go up here, oh,
All right.
yeah.
Back where I was.
Right. So, whoops. Well, go ahead, go up to you're way far down now. Oh, well. Anyway,
Well,
it's at such a high level, it's not, it doesn't have teeth. It's not gonna have teeth.
Yeah, so we got code enforcement ordinances, okay? And the city goes out and enforces the code. And there are properties that are in violation of the code that the city owns. Does the city cite itself in code enforcement issues?
No.
No, they don't. So if they pass an ordinance okay, with regard to invasive species. The city, in and of itself, even though there's an ordinance that says the city shall, have control and eliminate invasive species by ordinance. You've got an ordinance the city creates that the city is not enforceable against the city. Because even under code enforcement, they don't cite themselves for violations of the code, of ordinances, right? You understand what I'm saying? So by requiring it,
No, we don't cite ourselves.
you don't cite yourself.
No, but by code, you have to follow the same codes as the residents do.
Whatever codes that are in there that apply to the city is to follow.
Whatever applies to the residents applies to the city.
Yeah, but they
Well,
don't.
it depends on, I can't say that.
But if they're in violation, John,
Depends on the language.
John, if they're in violation, they don't cite themselves.
Well, if they don't cite themselves, because what are you supposed to do? We go before
Exactly.
Code Enforcement Board, and they tell you they'll put a fine on the
Yeah,
city.
exactly. So
Ourselves.
so if you have an ordinance that the city's supposed to follow, and they don't follow, there are no, what's the ramifications?
The ramifications is you go to the city commission, you complain,
And-
and they instruct the city manager to do it, or they tell you they don't care.
Yeah, so by
And that's what the charter does.
that's what the charter does.
And it tells the city, the
Yeah.
Board of Commissioners to tell the city manager to get it done. So what I've written down here is that we would like to see an environmental sustainability committee established to establish a plan, recommend funding, where the city then allocates resources and implements the plan over a period of time, and the city's responsible for establishing direct accountability.
Why don't you just
Within the
make that
department
as part of
and-
Section 8?
What's that?
Why don't you just make it part of Section 8?
Yeah, we can do that.
Because then it's a part of what the commission's
Something they need to do. And that's probably a good
responsibilities.
place for it.
And
Okay. Okay,
that's
so-
fine. And as specifically as it relates to invasive species.
I'm with you, Michelle.
And Michelle said that, I just want
I
you
know. I was looking for a separate
I'd say
section,
about
but
Michelle?
I'm good with that, as long as it's in there. I wanted a separate section just to show the importance of it,
All right, then that's fine.
but if you want to put that in there, that's fine, as long as it's in there.
So just Mr. Salzman, if this gets approved, do you know what words to use at this point? Do you understand what
I
to
know
do?
Irene's taking it down, and then we'll follow
right.
through with that.
All
I
right,
think
so
the-
can I have a motion
Can we
to,
define it a little bit better, just so we know what we're voting on?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I said, can we define it just a little bit better, have somebody read it back so we know what we're voting
Yeah,
on?
I'll try.
Okay,
I'll do my best.
okay.
We're going to expand Section 8 to add a subparagraph that addresses the need to preserve desired species and eliminate non-native invasive species throughout the city. And to do that, we want, we said we want an environmental sustainability committee put in place to establish a plan, recommend funding, that the city will allocate resources to and implement to achieve all goals.
Do you want me to try to come up with something real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Real quick?
Yeah.
By charter, okay, because you're shooting from the hip here.
Okay, hold on, this is at 3:55. I
Okay,
did this
the
last
city,
time.
the city shall, adopt a sustainability, we have a committee, right? Sustainability Committee? The city shall adopt a,
Thanks, since you already have one, how about you use maintain?
maintain the Sustainability Committee, I want it in the charter, and shall, I'm trying to use some of the language that he had here. The city shall provide through the Sustainability Committee a plan with regard to the elimination of invasive species throughout the city, and provide the necessary resources to implement the plan. I mean, it's that simple. That they've got to develop a plan and provide the resources to implement the plan
For those invasive.
for the invasive species.
We'll wordsmith it. I mean, I understand basically what you're saying.
But I'd like to suggest that when you go from the committee to the invasive species, that you just preface it with, among their duties shall be, so that we're not essentially saying, this is their
All
own.
they're gonna do.
Yeah, you know.
How about this?
Right.
How about the
Running out
charter
of
would be
paper.
amended to say that the city shall maintain a sustainability committee who shall adopt a plan of sustainability
To include-
There'd be a section
to
to
include-
include invasive species removal and funding resources.
To include the eradication of invasive species
I just think it's a nightmare, but.
and to provide the resources necessary.
It's a nightmare to put it in.
All right, let me just try this. So through the Sustainability Committee, the city shall maintain, no, I'm sorry. Through the Sustainability Committee, the city shall,
This is a nightmare.
this is, I tried to write on top with 3 different recommendations.
This is what I have from Mike. if you
Okay,
can read my
shall
scroll.
adopt a plan
We'll be here next week.
to eliminate invasive species and provide resources to implement plan to, no, that's redundant again. Let's see, what do you have?
Okay, the city shall maintain a sustainability committee and shall adopt a plan to include the elimination of invasive species and provide the resources to complement the plan.
To implement.
I-
That's
Implement
what
the
she
plan.
said, that's it.
It's all good except for the part where you're giving them direction exactly what it has to do.
Right.
Okay, so.
I think,
Can we
and
have
what my
the-
suggestion, and I understand that Mike may not like this, is that there is a sustainability committee and that their direction will be, and they must establish certain parameters to maintain whatever general statement you want to make. It's just a problem when you make specifics as to what they have to do. One or two things will happen. Well, one of 3 things. Either A, they don't do it because they don't budget it. B, they do it and that's all they do, right? And you're not really getting what you want. What if see, the problem with the charter is this. What if something changes during this time period and you want them to do that, but you don't want, but it's too specific as to that? So a general statement is better,
So-
almost defining what sustainability is.
Okay, so how do you get them, there's a lot of, sustainability is very broad, very, very broad. And you could do a lot of things in sustainability without ever looking at invasive species. So how do you make sure, other than the things that you want sustainability to do,
What about including
including, plan- I think it-
addressing of
There it is.
including a plan,
That's their action plan
That's-
underneath
that's
that
all that you need right
natural
there.
environment
Right.
section. I found it on the other.
including the adoption requiring
Control of invasive species.
control of the.
Yeah, see, I like the term control of invasive species, because maybe, control means either, it could mean a lot of things. It can mean removal, it can mean cutting down, it can mean making sure that it's limited in its areas. I mean, control is a lot.
I know, but to not mention them addressing invasive species.
Oh, I think we can do, but to include,
Just-
but not
yeah,
limited
it's-
to
it's
control
one
of
of the things.
invasive species.
Yeah. And just for reference, the technically correct term, I think, is non-native invasive species. That's what Florida DEP uses in
Right.
official communications and such.
Hey, Mike, do you like rock and roll? You know what Mick Jagger said, right?
Can't always
Get
get what you want.
Get what you don't always get what you want. You can't always get what you
can't
want.
always get what you want.
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
This is when the attorney should bring us back next Monday.
For language.
We could beat this to death
I
till we
think
don't
it's-
talk to each other
I think
again.
everybody's in favor of it. It's
Yeah, it's just how we wordsmith it.
Is that good with you, man?
Well, I think right now we're starting to converge on a solution, so let's not pull the rug out from under this discussion
I'm
right
good
now.
with listening, I'm good with listening to language that we can adopt, that, you know, is broad enough, but also specific enough to address that particular issue.
Right.
All right, so I'm just looking through here, and we talk about the comprehensive plan, we talk about a strategic plan. We were gonna have, there was another plan that was added, we had section I. New paragraph.
We do.
Yeah, then there was an addition of adoption of all other city master plans, which the sustainability plan would have been under. The question is, I think the first question is, do we want a separate paragraph on a sustainability plan in addition to the comprehensive plan and the strategic plan? Is it important enough to do that?
I think so.
Okay, so that's really the first question.
Well, when you say a separate paragraph, you mean a paragraph in section 8?
Yes.
Yeah, that's,
Yes.
yeah, no, absolutely. I
Okay.
agree.
So we need to vote to adopt a paragraph in section 8 that addresses the sustainability plan like the other two plans that are mentioned here.
I don't think you need to do that. I think you need to direct, well, you've already directed me to bring you back language, and then when you decide what language is appropriate, then you vote to put it in a separate paragraph.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying you shouldn't do that before we give you something that you decide should be in there.
Well, we're talking a lot about what we want to do with the sustainability plan, but it's not, it's, the sustainability plan right now is lumped under the other city plans. And so we've talked in the past about elevating the sustainability plan to its own paragraph here to give it teeth.
Right.
That was the first thing. And then the second part of that was to specifically call out what needed to be done for non-native invasive species and protect the ones we want to protect as well. So that is the total, I think, the total discussion that we need to address and,
So I think you have the
And resolve.
consensus. Let him get the language and we'll put it in.
okay.
I just want to bring one thing up, if you don't mind, please. Action 4 that they sent us basically says, adopt an ordinance requiring control of invasive species and create a preferred plant ordinance for private landscaping to maintain biodiversity and habitat. They also want to tell you
Yeah.
what the hell plants to put in your
Can't.
yard. If they pass this, they can tell us how to put it in the yard.
Well, they gotta get past the board of commissioners with that. They can't adopt it themselves.
Well, I'm not saying they're gonna pass it or
Right.
not, but
Should
think
adopt
about
the
what we're
Right,
putting
they-
in the
Can't tell
charter
people what
here.
to plant.
This is,
You
what we're
can
saying
tell them what
that
they can't.
invasive
no,
species is one of those things.
You can tell them what they can't, right. If the state is saying and the city says you can't plant this and you can't plant it, they can't necessarily tell you what to plant unless it's part of your development.
You don't know how much time this is gonna take away from our last problem with the city and getting sidewalks fixed.
You want us to plant these?
Like
Five
And
years from now, we'll see if there's any traction on invasive species.
I think.
Well, it's definitely something that's being addressed, I know, by the county. So people are addressing
It's
it.
being addressed all over the place.
Yeah.
Melaleucas and Brazilian peppers. And,
Yep, the Brazilian
and,
peppers for sure.
Australian pines, they're all getting hammered.
Yeah.
The state, I mean, you guys, if you ever go to Anclote Key, they have selective herbicides now. They sprayed Anclote Key, killed every Australian pine out there. Just so you know, so people are doing things.
All right, so where are you now?
I am wanting to hear the language, and then, once we look at it as a separate section in Section 8, a separate paragraph, I think if the language is good, or if we have to wordsmith it a little bit, that's fine.
Okay, and this is for the focus on the sustainability plan, vice focused on non-native species?
Correct.
Okay, that's where I was.
Yeah,
All right. So, what's that?
I'm happy.
You're happy. Okay, so, Mr. Salzman, your task is to look at words for implementing a sustainability plan.
Understood.
Okay, not a elimination of non-native invasive species plan. That's what I just heard.
I heard it's both.
No, I heard that we're gonna let the plan do what it says they're
And,
gonna do.
and to include language with regard to,
Okay, well, that's why I'm.
yeah.
To make Mike happy, I understand it
Well,
has to
this board
say.
is not to make Mike happy.
I know, but
it's to
he's the
come to
advocate for this
concurrence.
position. It's my understanding that language that would say including but not limited to invasive
Invasive
species.
Right.
Okay, so
That's what I wrote in my
everybody's happy
notes.
about
And
that.
I'm just for creating a committee and developing a plan. I'm not telling
So this will make John unhappy.
Okay, well, they've got a
I think it'll make
committee
John
and they've
unhappy, I
developed
just-
a plan.
Nobody cares.
Okay, so attorney to provide us words next week. All right. Let's jump now to our last
Height.
section on building height.
I strongly advocate Mike's position.
Are we on sustainability or building height now?
Building height.
Okay.
I was just going to save that, now that I didn't, I've looked this up, and I see it, and I've seen even ordinances that require a referendum, but they're done in the regular ordinance section. And here's the reason why I really suggest this, is that if you do something that results in a potential taking, okay, we cannot correct that situation if the charter prohibits it without changing the charter. And you're really, it's a really difficult situation. I believe Renee told you all that we have provisions in there currently, and that restrict height, which we know there is a restriction on height. Putting it in the charter, I think, it's going to be a very difficult situation for us to deal with. I think but you can be very draconian on it. You can put sections in there that say, to exceed height requires a referendum that must be passed. And that's about as draconian as you could get. It still achieves what you want, but that's something that you put as an ordinance and not as a charter provision.
Okay, so do you have something to say?
Well, I was just saying, we spent a lot of time working on the comprehensive land use. And what we did in that, we have, if you look at the plan, there are only certain corridors within the city that have, excess height limitations. That's the 19 corridor. Okay, I think there are certain exceptions that we had. But to that extent, and I have no problem with requiring beyond the certain height limitations we have in place a supermajority of the commission, but that puts it in the onus of the commissioners and not in the charter. But that would take a change of the ordinance.
Right.
And that's what I would think would be a recommendation. And I think that's your safety net with regard to height limitations by requiring a supermajority of the commissioners. That was just my opinion, and not make it a charter issue.
Well, and the other thing, and I don't know how this relates to the charter, though, but, I mean, a height variance is the Board of Adjustment, not the BOC also. And as significant as some height variances could be in their impact, that makes me uncomfortable that it doesn't at least have to go to the BOC after the Board of Adjustment. And I don't know whether we deal with that.
That could be
Here
something
either.
no, that would be something, again, that would be addressed in the ordinance. I have to tell you that a height variance is extremely, extremely difficult to obtain, because it's just not something that is done. I mean, the only time I could tell you that there is a height variance that I've seen is part of a development agreement, which would be negotiated for other aspects, right? That's a give and take agreement, and that is something that goes to the commission.
Okay.
Just don't see height variances.
All right, so I made this point before, I'm not sure that you were here, Mike, but I looked it up to see if there were height restrictions in various municipalities' charters, and there are in quite a number, and what's more, it seems to be an increasing trend. You know, there's already some in place in terms of Mount Dora, Holmes Beach, Mexico Beach, and have been for quite some time. And
Holmes
so-
Beach and Mexico Beach are areas that are on the coast, and those are concerns definitely for that. Their height, it's different in areas. There are areas in Pinellas that would have it, but those are coastal development. Like if you're building in Treasure Island, you know, we don't have those kind of things here. I'm just saying.
Yes, but what we do have, which is pretty well agreed upon, is a community that we don't particularly want to see become Clearwater Beach or anything like
But
that.
you don't have people, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt. You don't have people coming in here and asking for that. I think it might be worthwhile in this section, if you want to, is have Renee come back in here and talk to you about it. Because I think it's important to know what restrictions we have that are in place, and that these things really don't come to play, except, I would say, on the 19 corridor.
Well, I wanted to ask Mike then, so what are the height limitations that we already have in place, and for which sections?
What I recall she said was, she has height restrictions across the city. And not
What are they?
necessarily the same ones in every location.
They're all
Right.
different.
They're different.
Am I'm
Right,
correct on this?
correct.
And she also said that if you wanted, she needs to develop an overlay map, but basically it required a lot of approval to go more than one story above what the current limitation is.
Correct.
It's extremely difficult.
Right. So if you're in an area that's predominantly one story, they do allow adding like a second floor addition,
Well,
that sort of thing.
just bringing it up because it wasn't that long ago. We went through that whole thing with the hotel down at the docks, which was where they were. I mean, we came pretty close to getting that, and it was extremely out of line with everything else.
I don't disagree with you, because obviously on the
Yeah.
planning and zoning, we
Yeah.
voted, we rejected it. One of that particular reason was the
Well,
height.
You
and the-
guys didn't reject it, I don't believe.
Yes, we did. We rejected the motel.
I think
That's
the
by
Board of
Fox.
Commissioners rejected it.
I think we rejected
Well, they get the chance to also.
also, but we
Yeah, it
we
gets-
recommended, our
Okay.
recommendation was, I believe, was no.
I believe so.
Yeah.
And I think it was an
They,
appeal by the
they
developer.
appeal.
And they appealed to the commission.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but subsequently, since that time, we've been working on the comprehensive land use plan that I think adjusts the height limitations down in that particular part of the, previously, that was not, I don't think there was any limitations, or the limitation was different. But once this comprehensive land use plan is adopted, then I think that height issue kind of may go away, because, we've addressed it in the land use.
The
And what-
complicated thing about that situation was there was like 2 or 3 different parcels of land.
That were different
And,
areas.
and they sat in 2 different zoning districts. And the one district allowed plenty of height, but the other one didn't. And that was where the problem came in. They actually wouldn't have had to come with a request to do anything to build it if it had all been on the other
Parcel.
site.
Yeah. If it was all one parcel, then it would have taken it out of our hands. But I think subsequently, we went through the land use and made some changes to it, so that issue would have been addressed. The answer would have been, they would have been able to do it had we had the new land use plan in place.
That they wouldn't have been able.
They would not have been able to do it.
And what are
Well,
the
you're asking a question, I don't know the answer top of my head, but that's why having the overlay of what the comprehensive land use plan is a question I think Renee would be able to answer, what the limitations would be for that area.
I mean, I think what she told you was important, but I think you need to hear from her again so you can decide what you feel is appropriate.
She was coming back.
Okay, well,
That's just my suggestion.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Can we schedule Renee for next week? Irene? Can we schedule her for next week? Okay, and that's kind of wraps up all of the section we had. The last thing I was going to share with you, and I'm just going to go ahead and pass it out. We'll deal with this probably next week, but we can start talking about the front side of this. You can just pass that one. Give one to Mike. Thanks. All right. So what I did was I wrote up on one side recommendations to the board, and since Attorney Salzman is going to create the words that that will go to the board, that's what we discussed last time. We will prioritize, but the words that are associated with each of the items are going to be legalized, so to speak. And so what I did is I just captured what I think were the essences of what we wanted to have those recommendations to the Board of Commissioners say. And that's what this first page is. And then if you flip it on the other side, this is the discussion on the Marine Commerce Committee. So I pulled off the preamble that Mike said, and really I think that we need to start with the discussion on marine commerce in terms of, do we adopt this as an ordinance or do we adopt this as a charter revision? Establishment of a Marine Commerce Committee. And I wanted to clarify that because we were kind of all over the place in terms of that. I think we wound up really looking at it more as an ordinance. That's where the preamble came from. And I wanted just to make sure that I got that right. Ordinance?
That's my recollection.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so ordinance. Okay. The preamble that you stated, I pulled the words out here and made it more readable.
Thank you.
Please concur that I got your,
Yep.
what you wanted.
Yep. You made me,
Is that right?
you made me sound smarter than I am, so thank you.
No, you were pretty close to all that. And then I wanted to make sure I captured the scope on that.
Mike, we had kind of blown off that Port Authority thing, right?
No, I think to discuss it, not to require it.
It's a.
I couldn't hear what you said.
I thought we had said we weren't going to do the Port Authority thing, but that's up to you guys. I think it's a.
Okay, well, I'll take it out.
No, I thought that we would put the city to discuss whether or not they need a port
Right.
authority, not necessarily to recommend that they have one.
Thought I had that. Yeah, investigate establishing it. Doesn't mean establish it. It means
Yeah.
like, do we do it? Does it make sense? Do we?
There's a lot of pitfalls to
Yeah. Well, they'll
They'd
figure that there might be pitfalls and not go with it, but at least they can talk about it.
You have to define what it is, first and foremost.
Appoint Merrill, put him on his boat, let him go up and down the river.
I don't have one big enough to do that anymore.
Okay, so on this, I'll,
Just for
yes.
this, just for clarification, we used to have, there used to be somebody that was appointed from the police department, and that was their job down there, and that was a quasi harbor
Yeah,
master.
harbor master.
It was created under the first Waterways Use and
Yeah.
Safety Committee.
So,
And the city had a harbor master who had police powers so that he could go on boats and things like that, in case of fire or storms
Yeah.
and things like that.
yeah, so that's maybe,
One step down from the,
yeah, but that's something they may end up doing something like that, which was not a bad idea, to having somebody of law enforcement
Do we still have
around there.
one?
It worked pretty well.
I think the last one, if I can remember, was Bill Shiley.
Yeah, and that was 10+ years ago.
That I know of.
Yeah.
Was Warner, was he ever the harbor master? Because he was in the Coast Guard Auxiliary.
Was it
No.
Minsky or something?
That name
No, it was a law enforcement officer.
for a long time.
It was a law enforcement officer.
When he retired.
first one was J.W. Bailey.
So,
Bailey.
Roy Warner. that was his name.
yeah, but going back to something like that actually served a good purpose down at that area. So, whether you want to call them a port authority or a harbor master or whoever you want to call them, but that's something the city could look at, and actually, probably the police department can maybe allocate somebody, resources to have somebody do that before. Doesn't
The Port Authority is a legislature.
well, it does, but it doesn't have to be that type of port authority.
They could take over from the commission.
Okay.
We're taking this
All
over
right.
for us.
Well, I don't think the city commission would adopt something that takes that control out of their hands. So, but that's just the idea.
Okay, so I'll change that. That's Revitalize the Marine Commerce Committee will have this words amended to it.
Would you suggest, instead of port authority, calling it a harbor master?
I think it's more realistic, Mike.
All right. I'm good with that,
I mean, Port Authority is
appointing a harbor master for the Anclote River. How about that?
consider it anyway.
Yeah, consider, suggest them appoint a harbor master for the Anclote River.
Okay, I can make that change. All right, so I'd like to just review each one of these and make sure that we're in agreement that these are still recommendations we want to have made to the Board of Commissioners, okay? First is, we were going to request that they maintain the cuts to provide recreational access to the Anclote River and Gomax. It is a charter provision, but right now it's not planned for in the budget, and there's not a published plan for completing this work, even though cut access has degraded significantly and some are no longer providing access. Okay? Does that need to be amended, expanded, or is that succinct and complete? Okay, next one. Allow P and Z recommendations to be included on the consent agenda to address better use of the Board of Commissioners, P and Z applicants, and staff time.
If the item has staff and P and Z board approvals, recommendations of approvals.
You said if it has staff,
If the application has staff, and
And-
planning and zoning board recommendations of approval.
So I would probably intro it to the extent that the staff and planning and zoning has approved the application to allow planning and zoning recommendation to be included in the consent agenda.
And we wouldn't need to expand it, Andy, that says that somebody can pull it, that's just a given, right?
Right, they can always
Yeah.
pull it from consent, it's a given.
ignore my watch, I took it off, but I can't turn it off. Anyway, for approval. Okay, we can Get that. Okay, so then the next is all about the awareness of the Civil Service Board. I have the Charter Revision Commission recommends keeping Civil Service Board in the charter so there's not a perceived loss of employee benefits. However, it's incumbent on the Board of Commissioners and the city manager to make all employees aware of the Civil Service Board, addressing it as a part of their orientation to employment when they are learning many other things related to the new employment is not sufficient to ensure their awareness of this benefit.
Should
It's
HR
also
be included in that?
incumbent upon the Board of Commissioners to appoint and maintain.
Oh, that's right.
And there's a role of HR in there too, isn't there?
Well, that's under the city manager.
Okay.
That's why I didn't call it out. And I'm sure Mr. Salzman would have caught all of that. All right.
Absolutely every part.
What's that?
Every part.
Every part of it. He would have caught that. The next one, and we talked about, the city's large enough for a full-time city attorney, suggests that one be brought on staff.
I don't know, do we ever, like, vote on that? I mean,
We didn't vote on it. I recall we talked about it when we were talking about the city attorney.
I'm personally for it, but
but-
I just didn't
and-
remember about whether Mike or anybody weighed in.
I would tell you, as long as you could get an assistant also. There's just a lot of meetings to cover.
Right. Well, that doesn't mean it's the only city attorney.
We have more than one now.
I wasn't here, so I guess, so I must have missed the discussion on this one. But the question that I would have is that, they had that years ago. Herb Elliott was city attorney, and I think there may well have been others. Mike probably knows better than any of us, but I'd be curious as to why they went away from it, if there's some good reason that they're doing it to get the different expertises they need from access to different people or something.
Well, it doesn't, Merle, even when they had a full-time city attorney, you still have to have a labor attorney and a
Right.
personnel attorney. It doesn't eliminate those, but just,
Keep in mind, I am not tied here. I'm just recording things that I had heard,
I
so.
think they should consider it myself.
Absolutely consider it. It's not going to do away with additional attorneys
Right.
in the specific areas.
Right.
It'd be nice to have somebody there all the time. I wish we could get that lady back that quit your company, I guess it was,
Well, not my company.
or somebody else's company,
Yeah.
because she stood up for the public, and she stood the board in the eye and said, no, you can't do that.
I believe
Similar to
she,
what you're doing
Yeah.
right now.
Miss Kardash, yeah, I worked with her when she first came on, when I was on the board of,
She's,
I
yeah,
think
Historic
she
Preservation
totally
Commission.
dropped practicing law. That was
I
my
Yeah,
heard
understanding.
she
she's-
did. That's
she
too
just-
bad. She was good.
Yeah.
so, anyway, I think you know what needs to happen with that. I mean, we're just suggesting that. All right, next one is provide guidelines from the Sustainability Committee to the boards of the city of Tarpon Springs. We talked about that, is the things that they're recommending, make sure that that trickles down, right?
Yes.
Okay. Next one is to improve board efficiency, consider expanding use of juries for projects as used by the Public Art Committee.
Right, that's already outlined in the ordinance for the PAC.
So this is redundant?
Yeah, unless you want to apply it to other committees.
No, it's,
Yeah.
consider
already-
expanding the use of juries by other boards.
Yeah, there's a provision to create a jury of experts for more significant projects.
When you say expert, what about people that are affected when like certain areas of town where you put an art project, that they should be able to at least have some input in the type of project that's being recommended?
Well, we are restricted to put any projects we do on city property, so it's kind of,
You're a public forum when it comes to
Well, we always have public meetings.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, all of our meetings are public.
I'm just saying.
Usually what happens is if there is a major project, it's announced in the annual report to the Board of Commissioners. And, things have been, turned down as inappropriate. I mean, everything's out there.
I don't know, just ask.
Yeah.
So I tend to, I know what Mike's getting at, and I think that's a good suggestion, but, what I would say, maybe here, you could just, okay, we don't need by other boards. To improve board efficiency, consider expanding the use of juries composed of experts and,
my point is-
And affected individuals?
and affected areas, for, such as that used by the Public Art Committee.
Joan, do you need that? It's in the ordinance, right?
Yeah.
What
Is
other-
it in the ordinance to have a jury of experts, or a jury also including residents?
Who's gonna pay for these things, Tina?
Well, most of the people that
It's
are,
volunteer.
right.
I've been on one.
The experts?
Right, most of the people we draw from are from the city. We don't pull
Yeah.
Joan,
anybody.
if you've got it in there.
Well, the question is, what other boards would need that?
Right.
John, I think that has to go.
Well, that's a good question.
I mean, that's why I'm saying, what other,
Our project that they.
Well, I don't know. Where did this,
This was suggested, I believe, by Joan at one point. She says, oh, perhaps they should use a jury, and I don't recall specifically what the matter was. But it was, then we
Right.
talked about possibility of expanding it, for use by other boards.
Something like this, but those who.
I capture everything, whether or not it really needs to be a recommended
Right.
recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. Now is the time to say, no, that's
well,
not.
I can think of a board, the Heritage Preservation Board.
Well, yeah, that would be a good one,
Yeah,
yeah.
that would be a matter of
Bec-
ordinance,
so
right?
I think that.
Because frankly, I've watched that board.
I think you need to address that particularly with that board, say that board in your recommendation.
Okay.
Because I don't think we were just talking
Okay.
on a sidebar here, and I was trying to think of what boards you could have that.
What other boards?
Would you need any other particular expertise in like planning and zoning or Board of Adjustments or?
First off, I don't think we could do it on a board of final decisions.
Right.
Board of Adjustment, planning and zoning, I mean, the key with them is keeping the people that we have on there, because they're the ones that have the knowledge of seeing what's going on. I mean, obviously, anytime we have to replace somebody on that board, you want somebody with the background and understanding in planning and
Right.
zoning.
Well, Historic Preservation Board is a final decision board.
Well, and I think that's the difficult part again about it. You can look for, we look for people with expertise. This was the conversation you had. We do that. However, sometimes it's difficult to get people to volunteer for those particular boards.
Carrie, are you talking about revamping the way volunteers are recruited? Is that the one you're on?
Another one above it?
No, we're on the one above it.
Oh,
But that one applies to what we're talking about.
Okay. Okay, so do we need to put the improved board efficiency one with the use of juries on the parking lot, so to speak? Or are we going to
Either
include
that
this as a
or-
recommendation?
It sounds like it's appropriate for the Heritage Preservation Board.
But the attorney said not for decision-making boards, and that is a decision-making
Right.
board.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Then we'll just-
all right. Next one, revamp the way volunteers are recruited for city boards. Consider an active recruiting process where critical skills to board are mapped to citizens and then ask those citizens to serve.
Well, it's kind of done at the Citizens Academy to a great extent.
As opposed to waiting for resumes to come
Right.
At Citizen, wait a minute, but let's talk about who attends the Citizens Academy. Mostly is people who are new in town, and some older people, but by recruiting primarily for boards from a group, which is predominantly new in town, you're also not getting some of the long-term information and experience that you have. So I don't think that's adequate to be recruiting
Not adequate, but one of the many avenues to recruit.
One of many, there should be many more.
Yeah,
The
that's a
second
challenge.
part, the consider
I don't
active-
mention that here, that's,
Yeah.
Okay.
this is broader.
The second part, Carrie, the consider an active recruiting process, clearly, they need that, and some critical skills some boards need. The revamp the way volunteers are recruited, the language, it's.
So I
more
can
like-
strike the first sentence and,
No, don't strike the first, I mean, don't strike it all, it's the revamp word that really bothers me.
You don't like
I
the
think
word
it's just like
revamp?
Improve, I think we just need to improve.
Okay.
The Board of Commissioners needs to improve their public outreach to citizens to participate in their government. How's that, Mike?
no, I like that.
That sounds
And
good.
I would tell you, I think we, instead of improve, I would say expand,
Expand's good.
because
I
we
like
do.
that.
We do
And
it.
expand, how about that?
We definitely need to
Man.
improve it.
I'm-
Mr. Attorney.
Public
No,
outreach
no,
systems.
we are doing it. You can't make somebody do something that they don't want to. The
No, I'm
people,
talking about
and
improving the
expand.
process of the outreach. What's the
but you're
outreach?
saying that you don't, let me play devil's advocate.
Okay, go ahead.
You don't know what the outreach is.
Well, I know some of it.
You know some of it, but,
Well, I mean, I know what's available on the public domain.
well, Citizens Academy, it's
I know
mentioned
about-
what boards,
I know about that.
right? So
And I-
that's how you've.
I know what the lack is too. I don't see it on city websites enough in places like that. I don't hear every week at the commission
And that's
meeting, like,
expanding.
hey,
So here's what I wrote down, expand public outreach to citizens
That's
to
a good
increase
one.
involvement in their city government.
Which is expanding.
Consider active recruiting process, blah, blah, blah.
So I would put improving and expanding, because putting out a notice in your water bills improving.
I mean, that really, you're right, that,
We expanding?
everybody gets to hear, see that.
Are we expanding, are we?
Improving and
Improving and expanding.
Improve and expand.
Improve and
Yeah,
expand.
the whole
Okay,
water bill
improve
idea, though,
and-
excludes everybody in condo
HOAs,
associations.
yes.
Everybody, but you're gonna get some.
But that's
Well,
only
they
Yeah,
don't
well,
want
it also,
Right.
people who do it
One place,
online, I
John.
don't get those.
Mike was saying about the water bill, and Joan said she objected to that, and I said, well, that's just one place they can do it.
No, I didn't object to
Oh,
it.
she
I
just said that the HOA,
you're-
you
yeah,
get, you're right.
You're eliminating HOA people. It's just a notation, not a.
We can
objection.
require you to put it in your HOA letters.
Right.
That they need to apply.
There should be an ordinance to get those HOA groups to do that, because I asked my HOA groups to, please put this out, and they don't.
I don't know if the city wants to deal with any HOA group.
I can
Speaking of
understand
which.
that. All right. Let me go to the next one. Require the city to maintain CLG status and follow, or not require, request the city maintain CLG status and follow the National Historic Guidelines for our local and national historic districts.
Okay, national,
The board makeup of the Historic Preservation Board.
wait a minute, National Historic Guide, you mean the guidelines of the National Register of Historic Places?
I think the
I'm thinking, I
CLG
thought on the name of the document it says,
It is a state, I think
no,
it is.
okay, well, whatever that language is, can you? can
National
you
Register of Historic
So
Places.
Carrie, you got two things going on. The CLG is a
Really?
state statute, for one thing, and the CLG status mostly has to do with the makeup of the board of the Historic Preservation Board, which is where you know that there's a shortfall,
Yeah.
sometimes.
Well, I can make those two separate requests then. Maintain the CLG status, and then that the Historic Preservation Board follow the National Register of Historic Places guidelines for our local and national historic districts. Does that satisfy your concern?
What do we think it is?
Yeah,
I guess.
okay, so I'll make this,
Just for talking purposes, it's the local ordinance that provides the protection to the district.
That's true, that's true. Local ordinances do, but if you're in compliance with National Register guidelines, you may be eligible for certain tax exemptions and things like this, which might,
well, our local guidelines are basically follow the National Register of Historic
no,
Places.
because they're.
Evaluations.
It's a different, for evaluation?
Well, for when they go through the
Nomination process?
for the, you know.
Our local guidelines don't address the nomination process, I don't believe.
No, not the nomination process. When you evaluate a project,
You mean when you nominate a project to the National Register, or what?
no,
Okay.
if somebody wants to change the roof type, you're supposed
Okay.
to go through those guidelines.
Oh,
And follow
yes.
those guidelines and you make when you decide to allow a change to the existing structures in your historic areas.
Right, there may be some guidelines along, yeah, some national guidelines that the
That
local
they've adopted
ordinances
those.
follow.
Yeah.
You captured
Maybe
the
it's as
intent.
simple as follow your own guidelines when you're approving changes.
Okay,
Well, those are areas also, when you talk about height restrictions, those are the areas that should have the height restriction and the other restrictions you're
do.
talking about.
yeah, but what we're also talking about is height restrictions in other areas of the city as well.
Oh, yeah, but normally when you look at it, including when
Yeah.
you looked at Mount Dora, the areas were waterfront
Historic
and
districts.
historic. But same as I was saying, Treasure Island, Madeira Beach, those waterfront are the areas you see it, and historic are the other areas you see it, but not in a general blanket too often, unless it's a community that's built like that, like, let's just say Sanibel, right? You know, the
And I
whole
think
area is.
Sanibel is one of them that has it.
Because Sanibel's built in a
Right.
certain way, as opposed to Tarpon that has 19, we have other waterfront areas. I mean, you can't do a general. That's why Renee was saying, you look at the sections.
Well, yeah, I know, but actually, we only have 2 large buildings in town.
Well, we
and
only
those
have 2
are-
'cause only 2
And they're
chose to
Tarpon
build that
Tower
way.
and the hospital. you
Right.
know.
Okay. I think I've got it. So we're going to have one that's request city maintain CLG status. The second one is, requesting that the city follow their own guidelines when allowing changes to our local and national historic
I
districts.
think she agreed with
Okay.
that one.
And then from there, we talked about the Marine Commerce Committee, and that's on the backside. And then I wrote down 2 others that were kind of thrown out today. I don't know if they need to be elevated to this list or not, but here's the first one. I can make a recommendation, in addition to the change we're putting in the charter, to basically repair the sidewalks by budgeting for it. Set up, and to set up a plan for future funding. Okay? And then the next one is I wrote down redo ordinance on invasive species. Do we need to do that?
I think we
We're gonna
addressed
let
that.
the
They need to redo it.
sustainability-
They need to implement the plan
I
that,
think we'll be addressing that next week.
yeah, but I think
Okay,
you're more like
I'm gonna take
implementing
that
the
one off
plan.
for now.
Okay.
And then the last one was adopt an ordinance for building height and require height variances approved by Board of Adjustments also to receive approval from Board of Commissioners.
Can I,
Aren't we revisiting that?
What?
Aren't we revisiting that ourselves?
yeah,
We're having Renee.
height?
after, but can I,
Yeah, we're having
That's
Renee.
right. Well, the question is, should I put this on our working list for Board of Commissioner recommendation?
yeah, well, let me back up a second though. But one of the things that in actually, I had asked Renee, she said that's probably not a bad idea, is as a recommendation, changing the ordinance that would require a supermajority if they wanted to deviate from the existing height restrictions.
That's why I said that I also saw that as a referendum
Yeah.
question too, in the ordinance.
In the ordinance.
Why don't we finish talking about it before we say that we're gonna make the recommendation? We haven't finished talking about it.
No, but I don't think we're presenting this. I think she's just adding it on the list.
Yeah,
Right.
this isn't final. This is
This
just our
Depends on
ideas.
what
This is
you
our
decide,
idea, so we
right.
don't,
These are ideas,
ideas.
I mean, I can drop it off, but once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah, so we've not presented this recommendation. It's just something that we're putting as a list
Yeah,
of
I mean,
items.
I'm trying to gather all the
Do this,
ideas
then you
for
do
it.
that,
That's right.
so.
You can go. You need to, yeah. Okay,
Does that make
so
sense, John?
that is all I have ready for you all to consider today.
Very productive day.
What?
Very productive day.
Well, now we're just waiting for Renee and the attorney.
Oh, put it on us. Okay.
Well, we
So
are.
can I request, as far as the timeline, Renee comes next week, and that's something, height stuff we should be able to put to bed. I don't know if there's any other significant issues that we need to put to bed before we start.
Okay, so here's the timeline?
Yeah.
All right. We have, this has been our map, this has been our guideline, okay? If you notice today, we will start next week with the CRA board as an open issue. The ecological sustainability work, the attorney was going to provide some words
Yeah.
next week. And then we were going to discuss with Renee the building height restriction and what we should do with that. That's it. That's all that's left on our open list. Hopefully, if Renee's available and Mr. Salzman's busy this week getting all our work done, we can put all of these to bed. That means we come up with an agreed-to list on recommendations to the board, and after that, Mr. Salzman gets very busy because he has to come back to us with all of the language for the referendum. Okay? He's going to need time for that, so there's no reason for us to meet during that period.
I guess that's what I was getting at is.
You want to
where-
know when you can go to Greece, right?
No, I'm not going till the fall probably, so.
All right.
I missed that boat with a bad visa, but that's just.
So, Mr. Salzman, let's, I think we should make every effort to be complete by next week. Finish end of, yes.
I want to revisit, because of new information, the eminent domain clause.
Okay, and we'll do that. We'll talk about that next week, okay? That got put in.
I know, but there's new information, maybe it should get taken out.
Okay, no, that's fine, I'll add it. All right, so-
for not having any eminent domain.
Our goal next week is complete our open actions, all right? So that Mr. Salzman has to go off and be very busy. All right, how many weeks do you need to turn that around? 2 weeks, 3 weeks? 4? Hopefully not more than that.
2.
3 weeks?
2.
2 to 3.
Our first presentation, or the presentation to the board in ordinance form would be on September 3rd.
Yeah, September 3rd. You had also,
I think 3 weeks, and then in a format that you can then revisit it, review it, then we can finalize it.
okay, so that means the 29th, the 5th, and the 12th of August, we will not meet.
Okay.
Tentatively right now, okay? And that means we're back on the 19th?
Which is my birthday, so it'd be good if
Well,
I
who's
bring
bringing
you,
the
if I
cake
bring
then?
you guys presents.
Let's bring in
I
the
always
cake.
take presents for your birthday.
And we have scheduled the 19th, the 26th, and the 27th.
Yeah, I think we should be able to, that should work for us.
Those 3 weeks?
Yeah, because,
we-
well, once you see it on the 19th, you may determine, we'll probably have to meet the next week, and we might be done at that point.
All right, well, is it possible to get it to us earlier than us seeing it when we walk in, so we can have time to review?
I will certainly, yeah, I will
Okay,
attempt.
so
Right.
basically, the week of the 12th, you would have the draft to us.
Yes, I'm
And then we
hoping.
meet on the 19th to,
It might be the middle of that week, but yes.
yeah, yeah. All right, does that sound like a week workable? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, everybody's I'm gonna bring poker chips, so everybody will get 2 and you'll get 5 minutes. And once your poker chips expended, you only got 1 more left for next week. How about that? And you can't buy anybody else's.
Oh, man.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
You'll get a real big poker chip so you can,
All right, now, does this room turn into a pumpkin at 5 o'clock? In other words, if we're close to the end, can we extend next week?
Just
Oh,
depends
next week?
on
Yes.
What meeting, if they have any.
yeah, do we have
meeting
anything?
dates on the evening. What's next week? Offhand, I gotta look here.
I think P and Z is tonight, right?
P and Z's tonight, yeah, I think. Right, you guys got P and Z tonight, right? Yeah.
Right. Is somebody going
Okay.
to be there for us?
The other attorney.
The other attorney? Okay.
Okay, so Irina will let us know if we.
I'll have to look it up and make sure nothing was added.
Okay, I'm not too worried about it, I think we'll get through all of this, no problem. Anything else? Can we just do a quick round on comments? Irene, do you have anything for us?
I do not, thank you.
No? Michelle?
No.
Mr. Salzman? No? John? No? Mo?
No.
Mike? All right, let's go do good things. Meeting adjourned.
Fire meeting?